Yes. So let's see, group chat. Let's see, messages. West Africa from Tonga, Hong Kong. Oh gosh. So I don't know the distance. I was telling Sita Pati that I thought he was the farthest away, but I don't know. I'm lost now. Detroit, France, Alachua, Florida, Atlanta, Georgia, India. Oh, wow. New Zealand, the other, Australia, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Michigan. So thank you all for this for your attendance and interest. I'm also looking now for our speaker. I don't see him just yet. So just a couple of announcements. We will be, as some of you have already registered for the upcoming certification courses. I want to thank you for that. We will be starting that shortly. I've had to take some time to kind of reorganize myself personally in terms of getting that course started. Uh, I hope every one of you has taken advantage of the Speaking About Varnasrama book that's available on the website, Speaking About Varnasrama. If you choose not to order it, it's only $14 US. But if you choose not to order it, it is available on a download. So I hope you all take advantage of that. The download PDF will be, our idea was that would be an indispensable tool for studying about Varnashram, studying Srila Prabhupada's instructions regarding Varnashram. So hopefully that's available. And just give me a moment. I want to check my messages just to make sure I'm not missing any communication from our speaker. And no, okay, so I don't see anything. Let me just send him a quick message. And then we'll continue on with just a couple of announcements, other announcements. Let's see, make sure he got that. Yeah, he got that. Okay. All right. Also, you can find us on social media. That's one of the things that I've been spending some time orienting myself to, and so that I can connect with more persons is on social media. So we'll have that available to us, and look forward to connecting with you on social media. And last thing is housekeeping. He had requested, Abhiram Prabhu had requested that we make this interactive. So questions, I'm going to have everyone muted while he's speaking, but if you have questions on your device at the bottom on computer, there's a hand raise function. So I'll ask everyone if you'll take the time to locate it if you're not familiar with it. My computer is just at the bottom there. So you can utilize that to raise your hand, and I can then interrupt him at some point and take your questions, and so that it can be interactive. He had asked that that be the case because he wanted to hear hear the questions that persons had. So, and if you're not speaking, I would ask you to keep yourself muted. I'll be trying to do the same, keep everyone muted, just to cut down on background noise. So those are the housekeeping things. Let me see once again, is Abhiram, are you there? And I'll go ahead and mute some persons already, just so that we cut down on the background noise. And let's see. Oh, no, and so forth. Okay. Well, okay, I have it in. And let me just check once again in terms of any messages. I don't have any messages. Let me just check my phone real quick. We're only 6 minutes past, but let me make some contact with him. I'm going to put myself on mute for just a moment so that I can make this call.
Prabhus, Hare Krishna. I'm not hearing you, Vanina.
I had myself muted. I was just about to give you a call. So thank you so much
Okay.
we had gone through some announcements and housekeeping, et cetera. And so we were waiting your arrival. So,
Okay. Is everyone online?
yes.
Let me get myself in the right position here.
Okay. And
Uh,
at present, we have about 35 of us here waiting to hear from you. So that's
okay.
and I'll put it on speaker view so that we can have you. And as I had just announced, we wanted to make this interactive so that I explained to persons where to find the raise hand feature. So as we go along, persons can use that to so that I can unmute them and they can then present questions to you.
Okay.
Is that good?
I'm just getting myself in the right spot here.
Okay. Where we are eagerly awaiting.
I'm very sorry.
We are just grateful for the opportunity.
I got caught up in a whole nother subject.
Yes, such is the world. I'll explain a little bit to our audience how this came to be. There was in the little that time that I spent online, I had come across a discussion where devotees were, I guess you say, expressing their doubts about certain statements that are often presented regarding Varnashram, such as Prabhupada's statement about 50% of the mission being Varnashram, and other statements around Varnashram. So I was thinking that it's very important to get firsthand testimony to these facts, these historical facts. And the statements that Abhiram was party to were central to that. And that was something that you'll find in the Speaking About Varnashram book also. And so I thought to reach out to him with the idea of just once again solidifying the reality of those statements, what they heard. And I found out where this location was in India and contact information there. And I found him here in the United States on a fairly rare visit, I imagine, to the United States. And so I was just very happy to be able to make contact with him. And that's how we've had several discussions personally. And I knew that this was important information for others. So glad to have you here. And by way of introduction, because as I don't know many of the devotees that are here, many of them may not know you personally. So I'll ask you some questions so they give a sense of you, the person. Where did you meet the devotees and when? When did you come in contact with Srila Prabhupada?
Hare Krishna. Well, first of all, my obeisances to all of you. Sorry for a few minutes late on this focus. So I, like many of the devotees, I had a childhood and life that continually wondered about God and was looking for a serious and real connection to God. I grew up in the 60s, born in 51, and that quest started becoming very serious in my teens. And then, of course, it was the era of searching in that time, the 60s, as you all know. In 1969, I finally became very desperate and fell on my knees, actually, and cried out, "Oh God, wherever you are, whatever I have to do, please, I'm ready now." And that, within 24 hours, a friend handed me a pamphlet, Who is Crazy and Krishna, the Reservoir of Pleasure. And I had been reading Gita, but not Prabhupada's Gita, earlier, since I was about 14, 15, and many other philosophical books. So I basically had an idea who was Krishna. So I opened the book, and there was a black and white photo of Prabhupada portrait, and I instantly knew, as many of you felt such similar types of experiences, I instantly knew that this was it. This was my life from thenceforward. I was initiated about 6 months later by Prabhupada, and I was by then already a Sankirtan leader, and I joined in Detroit and went on very shortly after that to start managing temples. I reopened the Baltimore temple. I reopened the Miami temple. Both had more or less closed down. They were preaching centers before. And then eventually I had traveling Sankirtan party. I had a traveling bus, actually before Radha Damodar. Prabhupada went on that bus in New Vrindavan in 1972. He came in the bus. We had a brahmachari group. Then in 75, Srila Prabhupada asked me to be temple president of Calcutta. And that went on to interacting with him quite a lot. Shri Rupa became his cook. In time, we traveled quite a bit with him in 76 and 77. So that's a broad sort of perspective. The day that Prabhupada left in 1977, I basically left the institution. I never really liked being in an institution, although I was a temple president. But that was what Prabhupada was doing, so I did it, for him. But I remember that day when I told Shruti, my wife, that we're leaving the institution, and she said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I kind of know my godbrothers because I was kind of well familiar with all the elders, and I can't keep my mouth shut, so things are not going to be very comfortable. So better we go and make our babies, start our business, and sit to the side for some years." And I think about 4 or 5 devotee families came with us at that time. And for some time also Rangavati and Chitari and Devarshi and Nirmala was there, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj used to come and do writing seminars there, where we went to do our business and family. So we had a nice Krishna conscious community. And now I'm an old man. It all went very fast.
As we all are approaching that, or there already. So then you mentioned, just in terms of the 76 and 77, which this is such an important period, and it eludes a number of persons who haven't examined the chronological presentation of Prabhupada's instructions as far as Krishna consciousness. And so fitting Varnasrama in on those two pivotal years is important. And I think that once again, you being there for that period of time, and especially in 77, it offers a unique perspective on Varnasrama. And so that's where we could, if we could, from that introduction, focus there. That would be very valuable for this group.
Okay. Yes, well, there are a few very specific instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave to me. And then there are all the general instructions, which are primary for all of us, of course, our vows as disciples, and so many other enlightening instructions, but some specific that he gave to me. One of them was in 1973. I had become temple president in Miami. We were already a little established. Srila Prabhupada, I had interacted with him quite a bit before that, over the years. In those days, we would write directly to Prabhupada every month, a report, and he would directly write back, and we would go and visit him, and the GBC were hardly a factor. They were there. They were senior preachers. So in 73, I went to visit him in New York City. And in that visit, I mentioned that in Florida, the Disney company had bought up massive amounts of lands, and they were making something they called Disney World. And Srila Prabhupada quipped, as he always did. He was quite as we all know, a word crafter. He just could take any combination of words and look at different sides and create different meanings, double entendres, triple entendres. He was so brilliant. So he immediately quipped, yes. And I was saying, I think we should buy a farm. And Prabhupada said, yes, make Vaikuntha World, because I had mentioned Disney World. And then he said, he followed it up, which I consider to be the purport. He said, Chaturvarnam Mayam Shastam, Guna Karma Vibhagasa. And of course, this was all along the theme, all of you know. There were the morning walks, there was the talks about Varnasrama College through the years, so many things Prabhupada had said. It wasn't just out of the blue. It was, a continuation of what he was talking about at different times. So that I failed to manifest that in Florida, but it stayed with me. So then, yes, in 77, I, of course, became, Srila Prabhupada was very ill, and I had been interacting with him, and I was already doing his banking, and I was the one who had suggested that he leave some money for his children, which he even asked me how much he should leave, and it was approved. But he asked Tamal if Tamal approved of this idea. He told Tamal that Abhiram has said like this, and Tamal said, yes, Prabhupada, I think it's a very good idea. But the idea originated from me. My point only is that there was a lot of very personal interaction already in 76, and Shruti Rupa was cooking, and so we were quite familiar. He was quite familiar with us. So he then asked me in 77 if I would join the party and help take care of him, because now he was very ill. This was about midway 77. And this was in Vrindavan, of course. I stayed with him all the way through till nearly the end, but I was assigned to be his nurse. And Prabhupada told me in that regard, never leave my side, day or night. One more of the special instructions that I received from Prabhupada that I hold in my heart. Never leave my side, day or night. So I was sleeping on the floor next to his bed. I would sometimes just lean on the bed and cross-legged on the floor and hold his hand at night. And I was there most of the day. I wasn't sleeping much. So I heard some things, of course, and one relevant to this conversation is that around July, I'd have to research my diary for the exact date, but around July, mid-July, I was sitting on the floor in Prabhupada's drawing room, and he was sitting, some cushions were there, and I was massaging. So we were often doing a lot of massage in these days, hours, to keep a circulation moving. And Tamal Krishna and Brahmananda Maharajas were in the room. And Srila Prabhupada was talking about his fading health. And he very matter-of-factly, without any difficulty, would talk about, his death. It was coming. It was for him a very easy thing to say and very matter-of-fact. For us, we were horrified. We never talked like that. But he had no qualms about saying it. And in saying that, at this point, he was saying that, yes, I'll be leaving soon. I'm fading. And then he stopped and he said, kind of reflectively, "No sojati, not kanchati. I have no any hankering nor any lamentation." And that was one way that he talked. I have no any. It's one of his charming poetic methods. But then he paused again and he reflected and he said, "No, Actually, I have one lamentation. And Brahmananda said, because you haven't finished Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, no, because I have not established Varnashram. 50% of my work is incomplete. So later that day, as was our normal, this was summertime, as you know, Vrindavan, summer, very hot. And in the evening, Prabhupada liked to go up on the roof of his cottage. There's a flat area on his roof. And there was a rope bed up there we called a charpoy, you know, with a small gutty, a small cotton mattress on top of it, like a futon. And it had a mosquito net frame over it. And I often attended Prabhupada up there also in the evenings. He liked to get a little cool air, a little evening air. And I was alone with him for some time up there, at least an hour or so. Tamal would come up occasionally to check on a few details because Tamal was, of course, managing many things. But in the interludes, I asked Srila Prabhupada, because he was planning now to go to America to establish Varnashram and to encourage the devotees. He had told us that, let's go to America. So coming from an engineering family, my brothers, even my sister has an engineering degree. My father is a lifelong engineer. I like to kind of know how things should be. How do they work? I like to know, you know, how do you start a thing? How do you move through a thing? So I asked Srila Prabhupada, how will you do it? How will you establish Varnashram? I asked him, and no one else was there. So you can discount me if you wish. This is my testimony. And he said to me, I will go to Gita Nagari. I will sit down and I will teach you how to live off the land. So I have also been haunted by those words. Now going almost 50 years. What are we, 47, 48 years from that time? And I have tried to unpack them based on my broad, you know, observations of the world, based on the way I understood how Srila Prabhupada spoke, and based on many things that he had said in other times to other devotees. And then based on practical attempts, practical interactions with trying to see how to get Varnashram to start. So that's a little of the background. There are many, many other things to say, but those are the primary points that this also establishing Varnashram. Prabhupada in 73 basically ordered me to attempt it. And then in 77, he he underlined the importance to him. He called it half of his 50% of my work is incomplete. And of course, it goes without saying that 50% of my work, when you say 50%, it doesn't mean another project, a different project. It means the same project.
So I just wanted to once again remind all of our participants also, if you have questions as we go along, use the raise hand feature at the bottom and raise your hand so that those questions can be answered as we go along. So just wanted to interject that. In terms of, and you don't have to go off mute in order to do that. Just raise your hands and then I'll unmute you just in order to keep the background noise down. Let's see. I'm accidentally muted to you. You have to unmute yourself there.
I just want to say on some machines, I see a little heart and you press that and react, and that will raise and lower your hand.
Okay. Abhiram Prabhu, I accidentally muted you, so you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you are. Okay. Thank you for that, Hare Krishna Dasi. Yes.
Oh, that was Hare Krishna Dasi. Oh, very nice.
Yes. Yes, she was letting us know there is
Yeah.
different versions. It's a little different. That's one of the challenges
Yeah.
of online.
She's been a noble campaigner for Prabhupada's desires. Yes.
Yes. Yes. This many of these things were for the work keeping her doing. So we have a question from Sita Pati Prabhu. Let me unmute you and go ahead with your question.
Yeah, not so much of a question at this point. It's more like a observation, reflection. When you were sharing, Prabhu, first of all, my name is Sita Pati Das. I live in New Zealand.
I'm a little familiar. Yes, I know you, Prabhu. I know who you are. Yes. I'm
Okay.
honored. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. When you were sharing about what happened at the end of after Srila Prabhupada left and how you yourself left and a number of other families went along with you, I think that when I hear people inside the institution, if we could call it that, speaking about, Varnasrama, which practically nobody is these days, when I heard you saying that, I was like, this is actually how Varnashram gets created. It's like men taking action and doing something. It's like that actual on the court leadership, stepping out and doing that, rather than looking to like an institution or for someone else to do it, or for it to be this kind of thing that descends from above. And I see the same thing with Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita at the beginning, where he has like a personal sense of responsibility as a man for society and for family structure. And so I guess I can frame this as a question. Normally, when we think about Varnashram, we're thinking about Varnas we're thinking about Varnas usually for instituting Varnashram, because we see Grihastas, Brahmacharis, Sannyasis, but we don't see Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. But Arjuna's point at the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita shows that him as a participant in that society, he's a man and he's concerned for family structure. And so I wonder if you could just speak to how much of it is a precondition for us to actually establish Varnashram Dharma, that we need to have men, basically, is what I'm saying. I don't see that children are going to be able to do it. And my view on that is that if you are looking to an institution or to a government or to someone else to do something, you're not really a man, you're just a child, really, waiting for your parents to do something.
Well, now we're getting into the sticky wicket. The fact that Prabhupada wanted it, there's not a whole lot of debate. You can look at it in different ways, interpret it in different ways, but now how to do it. And it's not about just planting seeds in the ground. It's a social economic system, and they're symbiotically joined, the soil, the cow, but the social structure as well. And this is something that we're really handicapped in. I mean, our social fabric in ISKCON kind of looks like a train wreck. It's like, especially family life, my own family life included. It's a train wreck due to ignorance. And as some of you may know, I've lived probably more than half of my adult life in India. And I'm very grateful for having seen little snippets and whispers and remnants of Vedic culture. Especially, I've been very enlightened in my time preaching. I'm still preaching in Rajasthan. That's my primary work, is I still preach in Rajasthan. And I have a farm project and a permaculture training center, and there's a variety of things I'm working on. And we have some organic farms amongst my students, the devotee students that, are unfortunate enough that they have to turn to me for some guidance. So we have some serious, farms going on. all of them owned by those devotees. I don't create institutions and try to own land. And, you know, these devotees, they, of course, they're fortunate in that they have a family tradition. The women kind of know what womanhood is. The men know what I mean, the woman is the foundation of society. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. If it were left to men, we'd be out with clubs, clubbing each other to death and starting new political parties and doing all kinds of crazy things. But women give a wisdom, an inherited wisdom to social structure, because everything revolves around reproduction of children, protecting the wife, the woman, so she can create the haven to raise the child. All those things are obvious. And so much is said about it in the Vedas. So we kind of have to go back to that also. And yes, independence is very important. Another instruction Srila Prabhupada said to me, I should say to Tamal, about me. Tamal and I had a wonderful brotherly relationship, which wasn't always kumbaya. Sometimes we were nose to nose, grinding our teeth at each other, you know, and it's because we were really that close. We could get right down to the real issues. So when I was doing business, I was temple president of Calcutta, but I never liked to take money from the temple. So I had an exporting business going on. And so one day, Tamal thought he'd get me in a little hot water, you know, and he told Prabhupada, you know, Abhiram he's doing business, you know, he's flying to New York and selling things and going to Tamal. And he said his wife they have a home in Mayapur, but he's not in Mayapur. And Prabhupada simply said, yes, what business he can do in Mayapur. So Tamal was trying to, you know, goad him a little bit to get me a little bit sorted out. So then Prabhupada said, he should not be dependent, but he should not become independent. Interesting, you know, sort of conundrum there, which of course a devotee can understand, right? So you should not be dependent, because as soon as you're dependent, you lose you can easily lose your integrity. That's why a Brahmin is not supposed to be dependent, because you're starting to think, what does my source of income want me to say or want me to believe? You know, that's not healthy. A Sudra is employed. A, you know, person of upper, higher responsibilities, the three upper categories, are independent. And therefore, a Shudra also is not, his intellectual conclusions are not taken seriously. They're not important because he's compromised. So we have a long way to go to establish a proper culture, but I will say something maybe a little provocative. A fish rots from its head. And I think that the problem, and I've expressed this to some of my close sannyasi godbrothers, the problem starts with the sannyas. Not intentionally, really very innocently and unintentionally. But a sannyasi, yes, he should be dominant in an ashram, and an ashram means sannyasis and brahmacharis. It doesn't mean, I mean, I'm talking about live-in ashram. It doesn't mean householders. It certainly doesn't mean women. Sannyasis, whether they be guru or whatever they are, they don't have daughters. Prabhupada was another level of personality. And he could have daughters, could have sons. But a real sannyasi, standard sannyasi, does not have daughters. So what happens is that I'm going to venture out. I'm going to stick my neck out. I'm going to get in trouble for this too, I'm sure. So be it. No good deed goes unpunished in the Kali Yuga, right? The nature of a woman is she's by nature extremely pious. Somebody is censoring me by chanting japa on my.
Stoker Krishna, keep go on mute. Please.
Sorry about that. I'll turn it off.
Was that you chanting, Sitapati?
No, that was
Sorry,
Stoker.
Prabhu. It was me. It was me, Stoker Krishna.
Okay, so a woman by nature is pious and she has an inherent wisdom. And her piety is that she wants to do her dharma, which is to nurture the next generation. And she wants the shelter, the structure around her so that she can do the inner. Somebody has to do the outer work so she can do that inner delicate work of nurturing and bringing up the next generation. And she is the first guru. And in the customs of India, it's very clear the role, how a woman is respected, in that a sannyasi is considered to be the guru of the whole world. And he doesn't offer his obeisances to anyone. That is the etiquette, not even his father. But he always offers his obeisances to his mother, as Lord Chaitanya did, of course, to Mother Sachi. So she's extremely important. Her instinct is to find a shelter so she can do her very important dharma to bring up the next generation. And that, of course, leads to her requiring a man to do that outer work. So when a man does that, he receives her appreciation, which we call love. That's the only real love in this world, is appreciation of others helping us to do our dharma. Right? It's not that that man is, Brad Pitt or Lord Krishna or something, that we love them like that. That's the illusion of romanticism. A woman loves her man because she appreciates him. He's doing his work so she can do her dharma. Now, a man is very simple. A man wants appreciation. That's all he wants. That's all he wants. He's a very simple being. You can find the biggest loser in any village and tell him, the nation's at war, we need your help, and he'll go to the battlefield, he'll take a bullet, just the knowledge that there'll be a picture on the mantelpiece remembering him, honoring him. He just wants to be appreciated, and he'll become a great man. So I've heard, actually, recently a sannyasi guru godbrother was asking me, what are we going to do with all these wonderful devotee ladies? There's no good men. They're all bums. Who's going to marry them? And my answer was, Maharaj, they're all good men. You just have to know how to make them bring their potential out. So when the woman shows her dependency and appreciation of the man, he will rise to the occasion. But we don't know that art today. Just like the woman can mother the baby, she can also grow the man and make him rise to the occasion, because he's very simple. He'll go in that coal mine, he'll breathe that black dust, knowing he'll have a horrible death. Just for coming home and the child comes running, daddy, daddy, jumps in his arms, just for that appreciation. He'll do anything. But if in our social structure, all of the money, all the prestige, all of the safety is with Maharaj, the man shrinks back, literally shrinks, even physically shrinks his manhood. He's a nice, pious person also. He's a devotee, so he's not complaining about it. He's not objecting. He just shrinks. And we conclude they're all losers. Yeah, because our social structure has relegated them to be losers. We don't understand what is a man. We don't understand what is a woman. That's obvious in society today. And ISKCON society is just a paper-thin distance from the outside host society. We're not some Vedic, accomplished Pandava families. We are only just a paper-thin distance from our conditioning. So this cultivating family life, cultivating children with the proper samskars, with Garbhadang, starting with Garbhadang samskar and progressing into Gurukula. That's why Prabhupada emphasized Gurukula, emphasized Varnasrama, emphasized cow. All of this is a symbiotic system. Each piece is symbiotic with the other. You can't take it apart. Yes, we failed. We made a mess of family life. We made a horrible mess of Gurukula. We've failed to live off the land. But that is not a reason to abandon the fight and to abandon the mission. And this is the mission. The Varnashram is to help create the next generation on a stronger level. If we keep bringing people in the front door while they're going out, the older ones are going out the back door, we will never rise above mediocrity, which we barely even achieved as ISKCON. We are all very, self-congratulating, big movement. We're hardly known.
So I have a
If we
question.
were living up to Prabhupada's standards today, instead of debating between Kamala Harris and Trump, one of the candidates would be wearing Vaishnav Tilak and Kunti Mala. That's where we should be today. That's where Prabhupada expected us to be today, and nothing less than that. But
So
we have demoted ourselves to mediocrity, and I'm one of the most guilty ones.
I have a question for you. It's burning me here, so I'm sorry to interrupt you there. These things are so relevant. So you've mentioned, and I think what will happen is we'll come full circle because of the interdependence of all of these features. So given that they're all independent and we're lacking in kind of all the departments, what do you see as the entry point to jumpstart that? I mean, I have my personal opinion and I can present that, but because I've thought about along these same lines. Where do you start? What's the entry point or the handle, so to speak, on it? And
I think everyone in this discussion is equally qualified because there are multiple entry points.
Okay.
And some of you have been exemplary parents, and your children have been inspired to stay in Krishna consciousness. You've done far more than I will ever do in my lifetime towards Varnashram by doing that, right? Some of you have done other things. So in my small way, I always had since I was a kid, my granny oriented me to have a garden. And I heard Prabhupada say, I will teach you how to live off the land. That was the key, he said to me. I hope it inspires some of you, but there are other things in Varnashram. Again, it's not just planting seeds. So as I've said, I endorse in my students in Rajasthan. It's very easy because they already have inherited a Varnashram sort of family system. But instead of breaking it, very interesting, one family comes to mind. There are 10 members. They're all in a joint family. The father is, kind of going along with everyone else being a devotee. His wife, his 2 sons, their daughter, their wives. Each of the 2 sons have 2 kids with those wives, and they're all Tilak, Kuntimala, 16-round devotees, even the kids, Chanjapa, little kids, And they have regular programs at their home for the local village, and they have an organic farm. But the father who established the finances has been a little scared off because the first devotees they started meeting were saying, no, you got to leave the family, you got to, turn the farm over to ISKCON. And the father just in his instincts understood this is wrong. This is not right. And, I started preaching about 4 years ago, and I took the totally opposite tact. I said, what do you mean? The father bought this land for the family. You have to honor that, right? And this family tradition is the foundation of Varnashram. And already one of the sons he was ready to bolt. He says, my brother, he's too strict. And I want to spread and I just said, look, you stay with it. It's going to be difficult outside. It's going to be difficult inside. You stay with this tradition. Now the father's the first one dancing with me at all the kirtans. We hold big programs at their house, like maybe 150 devotees will come. And he's the first one dancing because he's become overjoyed that I've maintained the family tradition, because he instinctively understands that this is the only thing that still holds some piety in it in modern society, right? And now the other members of the family are understanding, becoming very happy with it. So that I'm pushing in that direction. But also we have, I mentioned a permaculture, I call it Bhaktivedanta Permaculture Training Center, which is really oriented to young Gurukula boys that are coming up in their mid-teens, 15, 16, 17, etc., who are thinking, how will I stay a devotee? How will I live? And I emphasize, and I know I won't, most devotees or many devotees may not agree with this, and I'll explain, but I emphasize prosperity, because I have tried, I bought farms, 30 years ago, and I've seen devotees come and go. They don't stay because they can't make the transition from such an easy money, like living off the Ugra Karma world, being employed or doing the pick or whatever they did, and actually transitioning to living off the land. They can't do it. It's a wonderful idealism, and we must get there. But my idea is that you take the branch of the tree, you make the axe handle, and you cut down the tree. So first we have to create a prosperous, and by prosperous I mean that you don't have anxiety about how you will live, how the children will live, and you feel relatively comfortable. And so, as you know, today in organic farming, money can be made. And amazingly, India is far ahead of America now in organic farming. They're storming ahead with it. The government is putting money in, and some states are declaring themselves 100% organic. I mean, it's a gung-ho movement. It's actually part of the shedding of colonial mindset. It's almost part of nationalism now in India to get rid of everything Western, because so much was shoved down their throat at their great, they suffered for that. And now there's a whole general trend, and organic farming, ironically, is part of that, or maybe not ironically. So we're hitchhiking on that, and we're even pulling in outside farmers who love to come to our programs, but they're not really devotees, but also other organic farmers that are starting to join our group. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in. Be inspired by it. None of you follow me. Each of you have a contribution. Even the preaching, of course, some of you are just focused on preaching, and all of this leads in that direction. But that's what I'm doing.
So thank you so much for that, responding to that. One of the things that kind of ties into that, and it was very almost shocking to me, and Sitapati, I'll get to you next. It was kind of shocking to me was the land prices in India, because all of this, talking about the land, etc.
When I tell the devotees in India how much land is in America, they say, how do I get my green card? I'm going. Give me 100 acres. They can't believe how cheap it is here. And we can't believe how expensive it is here, right? No, India is crazy, the land prices. No, so that's always a problem. It's a problem for starting living off the land in America or in India. It's a problem. Now, we have different ideas for doing it, but this is a big obstacle. Yeah.
But I think the audience would be interested to hear the prices that you told me. I'm still shocked.
Yeah, well, one thing is that you can, if you get the younger people, because us old people can't go out and work the land very effectively. If you get the young people inspired and guide them in the right way, they can build something up. I'll give you an anecdote. Each one of you probably knows different anecdotes. When I was running the Harinam Ashram in New York, it was about 10 years ago, I was looking for some land because I had a donor that might supply, and I wanted to try in upstate New York to start a farm. And I got to know a lady, older lady. She was about my age, Jewish lady, back in the 60s. She was a hippie like I was, like many of us were. And she just was idealistic. She rented some land in the Hudson Valley and started growing organic stuff and bringing it down to the farmers markets in Manhattan. Today, she owns 800 acres, all in production. In some of the most, Hudson Valley is a gorgeous place and wonderful soil, wonderful water. She owns 800 acres. Now, she was obviously a very intelligent and enterprising lady, but what are we? Why can't we live up to or try to aspire to such standards? There's ways to do it. It's hard. But to quote John Kennedy, we are not going to the moon because it is easy. We are going because it is hard.
Thank you for that. So Sitapati, he has his hand up. Let me unmute you. Ask to unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to something that you said earlier in this last part of your presentation about the centralization of safety, authority, prestige, and resources into the sannyasis. It's the critique that Sulochan Prabhu made in chapter 9 of his book, The Guru Business. And then you said one thing in there that, because the devotees are pious, they just kind of suck it up and then they shrink as a result of that. But I would say that that's actually impious to allow that to happen to you as a man. And I would point to Arjuna on the battlefield and his attempt to shrink in the face of the situation. And then Krishna just says to him, this is impiety, what you're doing in the name of like being compassionate and a good guy and everything. It's like, that's not what's required from you. And then I see in your example that you gave of the family with the farm and the way that the institution wanted to deal with that situation and the way that you dealt with it demonstrates that approach, rather than allowing themselves to be dominated by that and then to be suppressed and even expropriated of their land. Rather,
and then destroyed. That's what would have happened. They would have been destroyed.
Yeah, the destruction of the family tradition.
Yeah.
And then you took the opposite way, which is like, you are responsible for this. And, we have an example here in New Zealand. There's one former dairy farm. So it was a dairy farm in New Zealand, huge dairy farming, a lot of cows there. A lady, devotee, she married the farmer, convinced him to become vegetarian, stop killing the cows and everything. And now they've got these cows that are dying of old age, which is practically unheard of in this country. Cows that are 20, 30 years old, no one's ever seen them before. And in attempts to get anything to happen there, the ISKCON leaders discourage people from getting involved. And they say the only way that we could be involved would be if they signed the property over to ISKCON. Otherwise, we're not putting any energy or anything into it. And I was looking at that and I was like, it seems crazy to me. I would have thought brahmanas would be advising them and then empowering them to do something. But just, yeah. But yeah, my initial point there was that I see that as impiety to participate in that and to fail to be a boundary and like an uncompressible line as a man.
Thank you. I mean, really good point. Really, really good points. And there's a whole lot that could be unpacked from there, Sitapati. Yeah. The institution has a tendency, all institutions, human institutions, have a tendency to implode. And ISKCON is imploding in some ways. It's exploding and imploding, sort of a magical process going on. But it has a tendency to destroy family life. It has a tendency to attack it. It's almost in its DNA. It's not evil. It manifests as evil, but it's out of ignorance. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. And there are good intentions, but they're unwise intentions. They're ignorant of what family life is, because what do we know? Coming from Western, we really don't know what family life is. And it's not ha he he. It's tough. It's very tough, to maintain. Even I know on the inner, because even the ladies in this Rajasthan family, and I mean I'll tell you how traditional are. I never saw their face. They're in gungat, what's called gungat, with the sari over the face. I never saw their face until I was established as a genuine uncle to the family. I didn't know they had a face for about a year and a half. Until I was the one asked to do, the first grains of the baby and all kinds of different things, in the family. And then, gradually they, through their husbands, would tell me their personal problems. And I could see its life is tough for everybody. But what was the story of Mahabharata? What was the story? The most noble qualified, brilliant, capable family that we've ever could imagine. The Pandavas, what was their life story? Trouble after trouble after trouble, right to the bitter end. But their glory was they kept hold of the Lord's lotus feet. So what does that mean for us? We should expect that. We're being put on notice. This is life. It's trouble. Go outside, it'll be trouble. Go inside, it'll be trouble. But you'll be glorious in the end by taking to Krishna consciousness. So yes, that idea of ISKCON institution being, it's like, I've seen this in school teachers. I've seen it in ISKCON school teachers also quite a bit, is most people don't know what it means to educate someone. They have no idea. So they're put in front of a class of kids. The kids are naturally, out of control. They don't have a focus yet. They're kids. So then suddenly the school teacher, who's absolutely clueless, suddenly realizes, oh, now I know why I'm here, to control them. And now I'm a success. Similarly, in a human organization, what happens is it's in all in businesses and countries, there's an inspired founder, and then the originals that were inspired to his vision, and they recklessly charge ahead, recklessly. Like Prabhupada, his charging, it was reckless. Coming on that boat, it was reckless. Faith, the most exemplary example of faith. But I mean, he risked it all. And then those first pioneers that came in, they were also reckless. I was involved in some of those reckless things myself in the early days, But then, as the followers grow, the leaders start, we need some people to start organizing and start kind of keeping things a little more on even keel. So they start bringing in what I call the bean counters, the guys that count the beans, right? This is, again, a corporate history too, for any corporation. And then the bean counters start saying, well, we're really uncomfortable with these pioneers because they keep changing things. They keep throwing everything up in the air, So we need to get some more bean counters in here to get this a little more sorted out. Within a few decades, the whole upper tier are bean counters. And the inconvenient pioneers are pushed to the outside, right? So that happens to some degree in ISKCON. And then we had an additional problem when Prabhupada left. A serious contagious disease called elitism came in. And first we had 11 elites, and then there was some complaining 50 elites. So they opened up the gates a little bit and grabbed some of the biggest voices and brought them in, and again closed the doors and made another bigger group of elites, literally pushing out so many of Prabhupada's disciples, robbing ISKCON of elders, and again condemning us to inability to create a social structure. Because if you don't have elders, where's the wisdom contained? And if you just have, granted, we have some very great devotees who are become gurus and leaders, but how many disciples do they have, and how much time can they spend in helping develop? I keep my preaching very small. Of course, I'm not a very valuable devotee, so I don't, deserve to have a lot of people around me, but I make sure I have time for every one of them to talk about anything they want to talk about, because they don't have elders to turn to. And so this is our history, and this has been devastating for our attempts to solidify as a social structure. And who even has the time to go beyond that and think about living off the land? So we've got to fight through these problems in a positive spirit, in a loving spirit. I really don't condemn the leaders and our early pioneers. I love them, and I respect what they've done. They've done so much more than me. But we have to also face the realities of how to build a social structure. By the way, you probably all know that this phrase, Daivi Varnashram, came from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. He had a dream, apparently, that the Vaishnava community should be better organized. And the dream, as I understand it, was really about organizing Vaishnavas, right, into a society that could cultivate children, ensure the sanskars were carried on. I have seen in some very elevated gurukulas in India, not ISKCON gurukulas, I have seen children that were raised properly, were born with Garbhadang Samskara, they were raised properly, and they have mystic powers. I have seen mystic powers. They can read your mind. They can read what's in your pocket. They can tell what's going to happen 2 hours ahead. Why we don't, that was common in human society. This is not something magical or from, it's not, Bigfoot or from outer space. This was normal in human society. We've lost that. And the memories they had, it was so, I saw one guru that I was visiting, one gurukula, and I was talking about the effects on the children. And he called one of the boys who was running around playing, and he just rattled off some Sanskrit shlokas, the guru. Must have been 30 or 40 lines like that. And these weren't slokas that the boys were regularly reciting. And the boy was listening. And then he said, now you do it. And he's boom, right through, just wham, right through it all. And then he said, okay, ciao. And the boy went off running. It was recess time, went running again to play. So we need these type of boys. We can't keep bringing people off the streets while the ones that have been around for 30, 40 years go out the back door. How will we ever progress? So all of it goes together. We need the family. We need Garbhadang Samskara. We need children with fine intellect to come into good gurukuls. And we've never had a gurukul in ISKCON. Hello, we've never had a gurukul in ISKCON. I'll say it one more time. You've never had a gurukul in ISKCON. Gurukula. A kula means home. There's no home without Guru Ma. It's not a kula. It's an institution. It's not a gurukula. And unless the mother is there and she has equal authority as the guru, as her husband, she has her area of responsibility and authority. And that is to make the young boys especially feel safe. It's another psychological claim I'll make. Young boys are more frightened than young girls. When they're young, they're frightened. Because a girl succeeds in society by her goodness and her beauty, her gentility, and a little girl has that right from the beginning. She's immediately adorable, and society tends to circle around her and be protective. And she can encourage that by being more gentle and sweet and adorable. A boy sees what a man is and he knows, holy moly, I've got to fight the world. And I'm just a little lizard. I can't do anything. He's afraid from the beginning. And if a boy is afraid, his learning channels close down and he's just in defensive mode. And he can't become a genius. He can't gain mystic powers because he's shut down. And that's why Guru Ma creates that protection. She has the sensitivity. She has the subtle instincts to understand how to protect that boy's gentle heart. The man does not understand this. There's no way he can understand it. I understand it only distantly, theoretically. But a woman has this immediate, instant understanding of it. And again, I'll tell you, the great gurukulas I've seen, I'll give you one example. That the guru, he was a retired doctor. He set up a beautiful gurukula, paid for it all, takes 32 children, pays for everything. And he's a very spiritually advanced person. He loves for me to come and do kirtans and, speak there. Those boys are chanting they memorized 3 of the Vedas, like the whole thing with the mudras and the whole thing. They're doing farming. They've got cows. They've got farms. And his wife, she's like the mother hen. Those little boys are all around her, and she's checking on behind his ear. What's wrong? Why are you crying? What's the matter with you? Come over here. Come sit with me. And I was talking to her one day, and she said to me, I have 2 daughters and I have 32 sons, and I am the happiest woman in the whole world. And those boys were just, they looked like the sages of Naimisharanya. When they joined Kirtan, it's hard to explain how beautiful it was. And I just thought, why can't we have this? Why do we have Philistine brutes teaching our children, people that themselves have not been raised properly? But this is our plight. So
Question.
Yes, Prabhu. Sorry, you've got to cut me off because I talk too much.
No,
Please
no,
tell me
it's
something
just a question.
redirect me. I get off on
No,
rabbit
this
trail.
is all good, and it's the questions in line with it in my thinking. Natural circumstances, not say that they automatically produce that, but they foster natural relationships, natural direction, etc. When you can create, and I'm oriented in terms of thinking about land. I asked the first question about land. We talked a little bit about it in India. I mean, prices, etc. It's something concrete, so maybe just the gross nature of my thinking in terms of that. Certain parts of natural circumstances promote these things, the proper direction, and certain circumstances, and I'm speaking specifically about land itself. And I was wondering if you could speak anything about that from your experience.
Yes, well, my thoughts, take them for what they're worth or maybe not worth. Because of monetization of land, because of the capitalist system, there's big pools of funny money in Wall Street and the city of London. It's not real money. It's all digital. It's all, it's funny money. It's what do you call it? Derivative upon derivative upon derivative. So it has to be underwritten by something. So it's gone, land is one of those assets that underwrites this funny money. When I was a kid, you could drive across the USA, you could buy all the farmland you could see for $100 an acre. And guess what? That's all it's worth. Because without the farmer's blood, sweat, and tears, it's worth weeds. That's it. You cannot produce food. The primary factor is the farmer's blood, sweat, and tears. So the real value of the land is almost zero until the farmer is put there, right? To human society. I mean, it's obviously to nature, it's worth everything. But so what do we do today? Land is completely changed, and obtaining land is very difficult. But there are modern and natural permaculture type technologies where a small amount of land can be extremely productive. Number one, you have to become a master of that. At 5 acres, you can make a damn good living if you work and you use your brain. So what we need first, we don't need Sudras, we need Brahman Vaishyas. We need agricultural scientists, agricultural engineers who know how to graft, who know how to use, sprouting houses to feed the cows more efficiently, to managing the breeding of the herd so that the birth rate and the mortality rate try to find an equilibrium so you're not overgrowing your herd and overgrazing your fields and undernourishing your cows. This is what happened in India as an example. Because the British had raped India, as we all know, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars were sucked out of India. When they left, there had been many, many famines and continued to be famines. So consequently, when a farmer had a cow, he weaned the calves very quickly to get the milk. He couldn't afford to let the calf continue to suckle what she needed. Epigenetically and then genetically, that calf began to degrade. And when she had babies, and then those babies were also weaned too soon because of poverty, right? So now Modi, I mentioned to you the other day, it's just shocking. Modi arranged to bring gyr cows back from Brazil that had been sent over in 1854 by the British because they had kept the health up and the milk production high. Whereas the gyr cows in India had degraded to where they were almost uneconomic. So this is an example. We have to use our brains. God gave us brains. And the blessing is that the devotees that come to ISKCON, they're already generally intellectually stimulated. And if they're not reading Prabhupada's books and being around philosophy, they become thinking people. They're not, the Sudra types. We may have Sudra habits, but there's an intellectual tendency there. And we can harness that and become. So that's what I tell my young Indian boys that we're beginning to train is, you need to walk on a piece of soil, pick it up, smell it, taste it, and you need to know the deficiencies, you need to know how to manage the water when there's too much, when there's not enough. You need to know everything about the soil. You need to be a scientist. You need to be able to look at a leaf and understand what's going on, right? And the Sudras will come and work for you because you'll be prosperous if you know how to do this. And 3 acres of land, you can make a living. 5 acres of land, you can make a good living if you're clever. Now, yes, in the modern age, you're going to have to do some selling. You can't, if you want to just live off the land, make everything yourself. I know those idealists are out there. My question to all those idealists, I had this talk with Hare Krishna Dasi, and she was quite, of course, I'm very inspired by her. But the question to those devotees who say we have to just live simple is, how's that working for you? How many devotees are joining this idealism that you have? Idealism is the bane of human society. What was, communism, socialism, Nazism, these are idealisms. We need to have our feet on the ground. Our feet on the ground, our eyes in the sky. Yes, we have aspiration, but we have to start with our feet on the ground. And right now, people are not leaving the city. They're not leaving Ugrakarma. Even Mayapur, you got 1,000 devotees. Where do they get their money from? They live from Ugrakarma somehow or other. They may go back for a pick once a year, or they got some little business thing going. Or they're not living off the land. They're living on the land. They're in retreat. And I wonder what Prabhupada would say about this tendency of retreat. I would imagine he might say something like, retreat? When did they ever attack? You don't start retreating until at least you've made an attack. What is this? We're all retreating. Yeah, we're worn out because we're not doing things correctly. And so the material world is wearing us down. And we don't see our children going forward. Yes, the kirtan culture seems to be grabbing some of the children who sing well. But that's not the solution for the long run. We have to, the Krishnas need to go Amish.
Okay, let me just see. Any questions? I just want to poll the audience once again. Questions are available. Just raise your hand. Anyone have any questions? I know Sikapati has been, wonderful questions. Anyone else? Because I'm perfectly happy to let you continue with that. Let me go back a little bit. Oh yeah, Purushottam Chaitra Prabhu. Let me ask you to unmute and go ahead with your question. Go ahead and unmute. Yes, go ahead.
Janalad also had his hand up.
So what is that?
Oh, okay. All right.
Janalad had his physical hand up.
Who was it? Had their hand up?
Janalad Das.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead.
Janalad, can you put your digital hand up?
At the bottom of your screen, you'll find the
Okay,
hand
can you
raising
hear me?
feature. Okay, yes, go ahead, Prabhu.
Okay, I'm wondering, I'm in Jaipur also, been living here for 14 years. And I'm wondering, sir, where are you? What address, what's the email address? So I can perhaps work with you. I'm here with Pancharatna, and we're building a very nice farm community here. And I've been thinking about Varnasrama since I was in New Vrindavan for 10 years in from 1971 to 1982. Well, where are you at? Where are you at here in Jaipur? In Rajasthan?
Abhiram Prabhu, you're on mute.
There you go. No. Prabhu, Abhiram Prabhu, you're still muted. Somehow you're still muted.
Can you
Yes.
can you
How can I
unmute
call
him,
you?
Marina?
How can I write you? What is your email address?
He's
What is
just
your phone
he's
number?
just having an
Where are
issue
you at?
with this getting unmuted. I can't unmute you, but I just asked you to unmute.
Okay,
There you are. There you are.
I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
So my email address is Abhiram, ABHIRAM dot ACBSP at Gmail. I'm preaching the people I'm talking, devotees I'm talking about. I'm sure Pancharatna is distantly aware of them. They're in Phalera, they're in Govingar. There's a couple of preaching centers that I preach at a lot in Jaipur. Probably not appreciated by ISKCON or even Pancharatna, but so be it. But we are probably, when we gather together as a group, there's about 300 devotees, mostly householders. The training school, I have a campus in South India on some land I have there. We're getting an affiliation with a large university for the training center that wants to affiliate with us. They have a college that takes this type of thing into their curriculum. And so we're hoping to grow that. I'm not a roaring success. I don't take donations. I don't live on donations personally. I live on a tiny, tiny, small amount I get monthly from what's left of my government Social Security. And I basically refuse my householders to give me donations. I encourage them to invest in their own land and family. So, because I think that's the model. I don't think it's the institution. I don't think it will come out of an institution. How do you inspire a devotee to farm if he can't pass it on to his sons? And if if his wife has an emergency, he has to come to the temple president with folded hands. You won't get the kind of dynamic men that's required to build up Varnasrama. You just won't. You can't. The ashram system of ISKCON cannot translate intact into Varnashram. You can have a farm. You can have a farm. That's a wonderful thing. But I've seen many of those. Even the best one, I think, probably would be Shivaram Swami's Hungary farm. And I'm very close with Shivaram Swami. He brought me there last year. I spent a week talking about my times with Prabhupada, 2 classes a day, 2 hours a class for 7 days, and still didn't finish. I would say that, he's on the right track, but he's got a long way to go also. But he's got a very good vision. But as long as ISKCON owns the land, hello?
Go ahead.
As long as ISKCON owns the land, I don't know quite how to get that inspiration going. I mean, you can give leases, but I want my land to go to my son because I've got to work out, it's 5 years just to get your land figured out, get your water figured out, get your soil a little healthy, and
there's another hand up. So let me ask Purushottama Kshetra Prabhu, can you come off mute and ask your question?
Sure. Well, thinking about in the West, particularly United States, but any other Western country, the same question. So what do you see as a trigger or triggers for individually drawing devotees out of this corporate ISKCON mentality into this individual, approach to establishing a functional Varnashram?
I don't know that I have answers for the whole world, Prabhu. I think I don't. But what I believe is working a little bit where I am, and I think will work more and more, is to promote the potential of prosperity and to actually teach devotees how they can be prosperous. You have a problem in the West. The genetic material is greatly degraded, I have to say, compared to what we're seeing in India, especially Indian villages. So I have some advantages. It's a little easier there. And, the Prabhus here from Jaipur will know very well the differences, that you get some really fine human beings that are ready to work hard. And of course, compromise, the degradation is coming in India, of course, but it's more advanced in the West. People have a hard time to work. I know just from my generation, I grew up working. I had little businesses. I worked hard when I was young. And my son, who was a weightlifter and very healthy and strong, I was building a garden frame for Shruti at her house. It was quite an elaborate one with a deer fence around it and everything. And it was quite beautifully done. Also, it was very decorative, and it was a lot of work. And raised beds with big, pieces of log and stuff. And I remember I would work and work and work, and my son would halfway through, he said, "Dad, you're crazy. I can't work like this. I got to go rest." I said, "What are you talking about? This is just normal." He said, "It's getting dark. What's wrong with you?" I said, I'm not even tired yet. I love to work, So that's not there. It's not there so much in the West. And you got to inspire them. And it isn't going to be done by a top down, you got to get into their bones and inspire them. And prosperity is the axe handle that'll cut down the tree. That's my proposal. I don't know if it's universally, and maybe some devotees who are going to do it institutionally can succeed in different ways. I'm not the, one shop, for all things. I'm just trying to do what I'm doing.
Thank you.
And
let me just mention something, because a number of persons are asking if this recording is going to be available. Yes, it is going to be available. Also, just in regards to time, we're approaching an hour and a half, and I want to be respectful of your time, Abhiram Prabhu.
I have no time limits. It's my duty.
If
anyone can glean any value from me, I'm not a very useful person in this world, but I'm really quite ashamed of my life. But if there's any value I can give, there's no time limit. That's all I do now.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to be, I appreciate that, but I didn't want to be abusive or, et cetera. And if you need to take a break for anything, also you can, don't hesitate.
I'm temporarily in the States. I'm at my father's house just for a month and a half.
Oh, okay.
But generally, I'm in South India, and I'm in the Rajasthan area, also down near Chittorgarh and Udaipur. I'm also preaching down there, but I'm totally unaffiliated, as everyone knows. If you make one mistake in ISKCON, in your leader, they won't pick you up. They'll make sure you're out the door. So I'm unaffiliated, and happily so.
Okay, I have a question just in terms of some advice, wisdom in this regard. And it's starting from a perspective of looking at the Varnas in terms of who can take all of these various challenges, or who's the best equipped for that. And I see it as Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas would perhaps have the determination, I guess it's the word, to look at all of these various challenges. And so I'm pointing this out with the idea of, and this is completely new area for me, etc. But in terms of at least reading about it, this seems to be the most likely place to go as far as if there are persons who can move in this direction, independently thinking, willing to take the risks that are necessary. And also, as you mentioned, one of the qualities is resourcefulness. As you mentioned, prosperity. It's someone who's willing to come up with the resources and take the risk with those resources for others. So just any advice in regards to that, I would greatly appreciate it. Anything you could add to that, warnings, whatever.
Well, this is a very difficult challenge because ultimately Varnashram is a monarchical system, and we don't even understand much in ISKCON about how that system worked. I mean, to put it in a little bit of political science perspective, the king conquered the land with blood. He took the land. And we can't do that today because we're outnumbered and outgunned, right? And so we don't have that element. And then he gave the land to the farmers, and he got tax out of it because he couldn't farm it. And he knew that he had to give them stability, peacefulness. He had to install irrigation systems and roads. It's like it was his investment into his business, which was the kingdom. And moreover, he was in check because he wanted his son to be loved and to carry forward the tradition, and his grandson, etc. So he had an impetus to be benevolent to the community and to see that they prospered. And of course, his natural relationship was that all the citizens were his children. And we don't have that. But it would be wonderful. I mean, ISKCON could, that was Prabhupada's idea. Frankly, I don't want to just completely discount the potential. That's why Prabhupada wanted to start a Gita Nagari. But how he would do it, he was not bound by an institutional framework. He used the institution when it worked. And he shut it down, as you know. He shut the whole GBC. I was one of the presidents. I received the letter. Don't listen to the GBC anymore. I've canceled them. It's like, according to what worked at the moment, right? Srila Prabhupada is once famously asked about how to do something. And Prabhupada said, whatever works, that's how you do it. That's very practical. So we have to think what will work. Maybe an institution could, maybe the Jaipur effort, because you've got great, the devotees that are leading there are very intelligent devotees. They've got support. They have some cash flow. They're buying some land. I know of they do already, I think, have some land. And maybe they can do it. But you'll have to find a way to inspire the householders with inspiration comes with confidence, comes with faith. We were inspired to do crazy things for Prabhupada because we had absolute faith. As soon as the faith is not absolute, the person, he doesn't give half, if he's half convinced, he doesn't give half energy. He gives 10% energy. He pulls way back if there's any area of doubt. So similarly, if that person's hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears invested in building up that little patch of land is potentially threatened, and he can't pass it on to his son, you're not going to get 100%. You're not going to get that kind of enthusiasm. You just can't get it. It requires absolute confidence. So the king tried to communicate, to give that to his people. Prabhupada obviously gave it to us. Prabhupada could have done it from Gita Nagari. He would. Now remember, when he said to me, I will go to Gita Nagari, first of all, it was an excellent farm. It's still a phenomenal piece of land. And it was the only good farm we had. We also had Paramananda there, who was the real farmer. Prabhupada used to call him Farmananda. He was a wonderful devotee who produced so much food. It was almost hard to believe how much he could produce almost single-handedly. So he had a farm and a farmer. And he said, I will sit down. And what did Prabhupada mean, I will sit down? Of course, there's the obvious, he will sit down. But I've unpacked that, at least how I understand Prabhupada would speak, is he didn't know what to do. He never planted a plant in the ground, a seed in the ground. Same as when he landed in Boston Harbor or New York Harbor, he said, when I stepped off the boat, I didn't know whether to turn left or right. He didn't know what to do, but his determination, his brilliance, and his direct connection to the Lord, and trial and error, but with determination and the right purpose, he found his way forward. So he would have applied that same thing and teach you how to live off the land. So his idea, I think, was, at least what he told me in that time, was to start by living off the land. Because when that symbiosis between man's economic survival and it's tied to the earth, it brings piety and it puts things in their right place. That's my feeling, that things fall into the right place. And then you decide, do I need a Kshatriya? Can I afford a Kshatriya? Is there any role for him? Or maybe it starts with a Kshatriya, it can start with a Brahmin. You know, why not? It can start from any, and once you start and expand out, it takes a natural shape. But it must have the family unit. That's the foundation of human society. There's no need for human society if you're not making children. If there's no women, if it's just men, you have an ashram. So you've got to break that mode and understand that Varnashram is about raising children that are brilliant. There's no purpose in it if you're not doing that. Why do it? You just want to save money for the temple food budget? Oh, okay, have at it. It's a kitchen garden. It's not Varnashram. It's a kitchen garden. If you're not raising Krishna conscious children from the Garbhadang Samskar, being fed healthy food in a healthy environment with the cow, with mother cow, otherwise it has no purpose. We're trying to breed Vaishnavas for the future. What we have today, in my opinion, is substandard, far substandard to what it should be. You know, maybe it's so big compared to what we were born to believe we could do. Oh, suddenly we got a big temple, we got so many people listening to us, and we think, wow, we've really done something. We haven't done anything. If you have any idea of history, any idea of the big, big world, you know, we're small time. But breeding children that are, you know, from Garbha, from the seed, are Krishna conscious, that will change the world, that will change the universe.
Srila Prabhupada actually mentioned in that regard that there are devatas who are waiting actually to take birth in this movement. So
yeah, they're probably looking at the Gurukulas we offer and saying, I think I'm going to wait another 50 years. I don't think so.
Yes. Interesting. So that's there. Going back to the example, like you mentioned, Prabhupada going and Srila Prabhupada going and then examining things. And there's reference when he came to America that he spent considerable time, just looking and figuring out what was going on here in terms of just the people and so forth, as a completely new culture and so forth. He observed, you know, just observed what are these things, you know, human beings doing here? How do they do? So similar approach you were saying that you envisioned he would do in the land. Interesting.
Of course. I mean, having quite a lot of interaction with Prabhupada, I can tell you that he asked us all the time, what did we think? How should we do something? And sometimes he stopped a plan he had because of our advice. Directly, I can tell you in my case. Like he wanted the temple in the lake in front of the Calcutta temple. I actually got permission. I went through all the political, you know, machinations. I had a letter of permission. And then I advised Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, I don't think we should build it. He said, why? And I said, because as a secular constitutional republic, they're not giving you the land. They're allowing you to beautify it. You can build a temple in the lake, but it is public property. And if the communists, and they were coming up at that time, Jyoti Basu was bringing in the communist regime in Bengal. If they want to hold a rally in the temple, they have every right to do so. You cannot stop them. And Prabhupada said, oh, no, we cannot do that. I said, well, I'm just saying this was normal. Prabhupada wasn't a pre-programmed robot. Like the Pandavas, they were surprised, they were shocked at all the twists and turns of their fate.
Mm.
It wasn't that they had it all figured out in advance.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was what showed their glory. That's what showed Prabhupada's glory. They was confronted with all these surprises and circumstances that were very difficult. And he consistently pushed on, never failing to push on with great courage and at all risk, knowing that everything was at risk.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think he would have had to sit down. That's what he meant. And he would have interacted with Paramananda. He had a lot of faith in Paramananda as a farmer. And, there was feedback coming even from outside, the non-devotee farmers. And why not? He was a practical person. He would have figured out how to do it, at least to start the seed. And the seed, I believe, is with young people, inspiring them to build their life. It's pretty hard to take a 40, 50, 60-year-old IT engineer. It's done. It can be done, but it's harder. If you take a boy at 15, 16, well, that's what I'm trying to do. We're training them, and they're learning online. They're learning directly hands-on. They do their homework is growing things, making the Jivamrita, the different concoctions that are used in organic farming. They make their own, they take extensive notes, and then we send them for several months hands-on farming at different organic farms that we're connecting with. And, they see practically, I can do this, right? And then I'll try to stay in there and help them. And I have experience in marketing of organic foods. I've developed lines of organic foods for the largest organic food system in India at that time. Actually, it's based in Jaipur. I don't know if the Jaipur devotees remember the Murarka Foundation, Down to Earth. I think it's kind of deteriorated now after the death of Mr. Murarka. But at that time, I built a line of 160 items. We analyzed every item in an Indian kitchen, and we sourced everything organically. I developed all the packaging, distribution systems, and everything for them as a consultant. Not because I made money on it. I did make some money, but it wasn't much. It didn't pay for my time. But it was because I'm enthusiastic about it. I wanted to experience it. So I want to get the devotees to learn those kind of technologies, because some devotees are not farmers. Some devotees can think about marketing. But what they should think about is bringing prosperity into the devotee community. And so we're trying to build that kind of scaffolding. It's early on. It could all fall apart. I could be dead tomorrow. But, I was asked by Srila Prabhupada, or ordered. Everything he asked me was an order as far as I'm concerned. So I'm trying with what I know. It's not the universal solution, but I hope it inspires others to use their own life experiences and abilities to find a way in, to try to find a way in to a permanent culture. I know we keep modeling Daivi Varnashram on the old Varnashram that we think we know something about, which actually we don't know very much about from the Puranas and things. We don't really see it or understand what's really behind it. But anyway, it's really about expanding the devotee community into a sustainable structure that, yes, is based on Chaturvarnamayam Shustam, but it's very practical. It's very, very practical. We have to avoid idealism.
Okay.
Please avoid idealism. It's the bane of human society.
Okay.
Idealism, I define it, means you try to impose on reality what you want it to be.
Yes.
Just like Karl Marx. He didn't have a clue about the nature of men. He could understand the nature of corruption. He was correct about that because he was corrupt.
Okay.
He actually was, if you study his life story, he was a real bastard.
Question, there's a question, a hand raised. Bhakti Ulysses, Hare Krishna, your question.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Abhiram Prabhu. Very nice to hear from you. wonderful testimony. Sometimes it's even hard to prove the 50% statement. So I really appreciate that. It's even obscured. It's amazing. I want to comment on 3 points.
Let me just say
yeah.
one thing on that point. I am
Yeah.
an easily discredited person. I'm I can easily be written off. But let me say this in my defense. I never wanted to be a guru. I don't want to be famous. I don't want the salt of ISKCON. I'm happy being out preaching independently. Very happy. I wouldn't want it any other way. I have no motive to tell a lie. I'm not this discussion with a group of devotees. It's a little uncomfortable for me because I don't like to propose that I'm some kind of authority, but I am telling the truth. And I have to face Srila Prabhupada someday again, face to face, and answer for all of my sins. And I certainly don't want to have a sin that I misquoted and misdirected. That sin I won't carry. This was what Prabhupada said. Take it for what you will.
Yes, I think there's at least 2 other testimonies that confirm that. So it's just that for some reason it gets obscured, but you're not the only one. There's at least 3 that I can recall. So I really appreciate that. It's very important. I think there's a lot of mercy to be obtained by serving Prabhupada in this line, because it's like 50%. How much mercy can we get if any of us can make it work? So I have 3 points to make regarding the topics. First is I think the key element, the most important for all of us, is to first identify our own Varna. Some of you already know me, so there's a Varna calculator. I did a website, it looks like this. And basically you input your date of birth, your city of birth, and it gives you the Varna. So this should be the starting point, in my opinion, for all devotees to first do the self-awareness to understand what is the nature of my own body. That determines what kind of activity, because Varna is how am I going to earn money, basically. Socially speaking, is what work I'm going to do to make money. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is we were discussing about the individual economic problem, how we're going to solve it. And you mentioned making a farm, being very expert in agriculture and all these things. I find it very difficult for most devotees to get out of the city. And we see that very strongly. So I find the easiest way to accomplish it is more about choosing the proper location, because that's one of the biggest mistakes being done. We are in Mexico. Life is very cheap. Milk is very cheap. Labor is cheap. And it's way easier to do Varnasrama or to solve the economic problem in this environment. If I try to do this in US, in Canada, it's just unbelievably painful because of taxes, health insurance, 10 million problems. So selecting the proper location, I think, is one of the most important parts, because I don't even need to own land. I don't even need a lot of money. Like here where I'm located in Mexico, I could live with $100 a month, rent a little space, eat, done. Problem solved. So location is more important. Once the proper location is chosen, which is very simple requirements, lots of cows, free grazing, cheap milk, suitable weather. Simple formula, water. Once you have that, you solve your individual economic problem. You can work online. It's easy nowadays to get internet anywhere. So I can easily make $100 in 1 hour programming that maintains my needs. So once every single devotee is self-sufficient in that way, don't have to be expert in agriculture, don't have to learn how to milk cows, just simply have enough money to pay for a little milk and veggies, have a place to stay. And then the third step, that second point, and the third point is just simply work with others according to their Varna. So I'm Kshatriya, you're Vaishya, you're Sudra. Just cooperate, make projects together, and make things happen. And I think that that is the easiest way to get it going. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
May
Thank
I
you.
comment?
Yes.
This Prabhu is very wise. He's spoken very correctly, in my opinion, which I don't know, if,
I
my
try.
opinion, yeah. And I have looked at Mexico quite a lot. I think in the Western world, there's a huge merit to Mexico. I have some concerns about the government and some of the forces that we all know about there that can be difficult, but I believe there are parts that are quite safe, especially I think in the Yucatan and some of the other areas away from the big cities and away from the borders. But the climate, the people are very gentle and sweet. So, and also there's, as any of you have worked in America, I've employed people from Mexico in America, and they always have a good attitude about working. They're not shy of working, and that's very important. So you have a Sudra class there and that we don't have. We've got less than Sudras in America. That means they don't want to work. They're dumb and they don't want to work. And in Mexico, you have simple people that are willing to work. So and then of course there are also the normal level of intellectual people and intelligent people there. So there's a lot of favorable circumstances in Mexico.
Can I interject something? One, Sita Pati also put in that also in terms of family structure there, that within some, let me see, how do you say it? He says Mexico has a more intact family tradition than the U.S.
Yeah. Yeah. They have
It's Latin America,
wonderful food. They have lots of advantages. They've got problems like everywhere else, but it's definitely an option I've been looking at over the years. I think he's right. And, okay, understanding your Varna is very important. One should know himself. I have done this reflection, and I'm a failed Kshatri. Really, seriously, I'm not trying to be humble. I really am a failed Kshatri. That's a clear. But I've been protective, and I've taken a bullet and I've put out bullets. When people were attacked, and I don't feel fear in those circumstances. And I've always thought about trying to help others, trying to facilitate others. That's my obsession, not to gain for myself. You can look at the Varnashram, the four orders. Really, the Kshatriya and the Brahmins are kind of similar, and the Vaishya and the Sudras are kind of similar in that Vaishyas and Sudras are really self-centered. They're not benevolent so much. Some Vaishyas are, of course, but they're of the lower caste. Whereas Brahmins are and Kshatriyas are very similar in that their life is dedicated to the well-being of others, right? In different ways, obviously. One is fighting and administering, and one is teaching and guiding. But they're both selfless. A Kshatriya's glory to go and die for, protecting his charge, who he's responsible for. He finds that glorious, And yeah, it's good to evaluate yourself and make sure that you're contributing according to your ability and your Varna as much as you can. But, I've failed to be a good Kshatriya. I've failed to be a good family man. I've failed in so many ways. I'm ultimately a failure as a disciple. But that doesn't mean I will quit. I will not quit.
Devarshi has a question. Devarshi, go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Abhiram Prabhu. So I know you are not so young. So what is the source of your enthusiasm to push Srila Prabhupada mission?
I have a problem. I can't shake Krishna. I can't get him out of my system. I saw too much when I was with Prabhupada. I was too convinced, from what I saw. I'm definitely a rascal and have all materialistic tendencies, but I'm just I can't go any other direction. It happens, after some years, I suppose. It's like a donkey. If you train him well enough, he just keeps doing the donkey work, so I get immense joy out of it also, immense joy from helping other devotees. I know I'm not, destined to any great spiritual achievement for many lifetimes, but I do know that someday Krishna will save me because I have tried to help Prabhupada. I've tried to help other devotees for that reason only. And I don't know. I see the effect on others. I see their lives blossom and flower and happiness grow in their hearts and hope grow in their hearts. And so it's so inspiring. It just keeps, it's like, it's like an addiction. You want more and more after time. Yeah. It's pretty easy. You're all inspired. Look at you, I think most of the young devotees inspire me to help them and encourage them. That gives me great happiness.
I have a question just as I'm thinking and hearing you about this, and then I look at the persons that are here. I'm kind of surveying the crowd that's here tonight, and most of us are older, and as I'm, for those who have their cameras on, and so I'm just thinking about just that point you're mentioning in terms of you found a niche where you are able to work with younger persons. So what is my question? I'm just thinking in terms of, because I'm in Alachua, we have a lot of young people, and we were in things are in touch with a number of young people, and they're not here. Tonight, they're not here. And I'm just challenging myself as I'm thinking just to see what Krishna might inspire me to think of in terms of how to break into their lives or what to present to them. Because there's, as you mentioned, like there's a number of different avenues that are developed. Like later this year, we'll have this gathering in Orlando, and they're expecting some 4,000 devotees to get together for kirtan, which is very wonderful. But even if we're able to get a portion of that together for this direction, I think it's important. But we don't have at this point their attention. Any thoughts? If you have any thoughts on that, I'm just kind of churning that as having heard you speak.
Because you focus this exchange on me, I want to be careful to not say things that I'm not really competent to talk about, because I'm not an authority in that area. I'm an authority at the things I'm trying to do, and I'm an authority on why I'm trying to do it that way, But I haven't saved my own children. That's why I call myself a failure, truly a failure. And that's why I keep saying it's not out of humility. It's out of being real, being truthful. I failed to inspire them to go on in Krishna consciousness. They're nice, really nice people. I really admire them. They've become very, very nice people. And, I admire them as humans. But I've failed to inspire them in a life of Krishna consciousness. So I can't. I could talk informally with other devotees, but most of you are probably more qualified in this area than me. I don't see the Kirtan Mela directly connecting with this, but I think it has a long-term connection. I know Prabhupada didn't directly talk about Kirtan Melas per se, this culture of Melas after Mela. He did talk about Varnasrama. So I'm there. I'm focused there. He did talk about Sankirtan and Harinam and all the things we know. But this is a new phenomena. I can't say where it fits or how it fits. It obviously, the holy name chanted even offensively. And I'm not saying they're chanting offensively. I'm saying, but even offensively, the holy name is auspicious. Even Nama Parad is auspicious. And certainly they're not chanting in Namaparad. They're chanting in Namabas. It's Namabas. It's the shadow of the name. because musical talent becomes the leading edge of the whole inspiration, and that is not really that's not Sudanam. That's not Sudanam. But as you know, Bhaktisiddhanta sang out of key on purpose, just to break that Bengali charm. Because if you want to hear beautiful singers, there's nobody like the Bengalis. They're just born with the Gandharva voices and tunes. And a lot of the Kirtan Mela singers are just copying Bengalis, trying to copy Bengalis because they're so good. The Bhaktisiddhanta purposely had to step in and chop it. He literally chopped it, right? So I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's a great thing that the kids are coming together and chanting. It's a really great thing. It's having big effects because it's the holy name. I don't know what the holy name's plan is there. I'm not the expert on it. I just am not. I don't know.
Bhakti
It's a
Ulysses
mystery.
has his hand up for another question. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna is commenting on the topic of the youth. So for the last year, I've been preaching online on TikTok. Pretty much every kid is on TikTok. So live streaming on TikTok has given me a very clear understanding of the mindset and the general tendencies in the youth. So basically, to sum it up, it's what Prabhupada did back in the 60s. We have to create a farm environment where people who are suffering a lot from city life, they can just go join and be happy, serve and do whatever they have to do in the community, and just feel peace and happiness. I broadcast a lot of philosophy and a lot of farm, just a tour of the farm and like that. Immediately the interest is towards farm, nature, animals, like that. Young people, they are more attracted to that. And they say things like, how can I join you tomorrow? I don't get that from preaching. I can preach for months and I don't get that. But just showing a beautiful place with animals, nature, immediately people are interested, young, including young. And so it's basically making it very cheap to allow for someone to come, and make it very, very inexpensive to maintain, to pay the food and the place to stay for that person. And that is what Prabhupada did, pretty much create a farm, and then anybody wants to join, he's like a big the grandfather, big father. Just accept anyone, and then basically once they join, they have the principles, and then Varna, all these things have to be applied. So that's an easy way to attract young people. That's what I've experienced.
Well, I'd love to interact with you very deeply, Prabhu. I'm surprised that we're not known much to each other. I will make one comment on something you said there. I think it's a great way to attract young people. But, I bought this farm in South India. It's a very beautiful farm 33 years ago now. And I've watched probably 25 foreign couples who love to be in India move to that farm. Some started building houses. We were like basically giving them the land, and then I watched them all leave because they didn't establish a real income base.
Correct.
And because I failed, I didn't train them and guide them so that they could be prosperous on that farm and thus continue. And moreover, that they were prosperous enough where their children would grow up and say, I'm not going to that crazy city. We're doing great here. We got plenty of food. We got everything we need. Why would I go to the city?
Yeah.
I've got my friends, my family, the temple. It's all wonderful. But it requires an economic base that is solid. So you have to progress it to that level to keep it going. And I think
that's
it's great.
That's why it's so important, the location, and it is very, very cheap to live, because if you have that formula, then it's extremely obvious. Like if you have very cheap milk, very cheap food, you work a little bit and you get all your needs. And so that is very, very motivating. There's no way someone wants to go to the city after experiencing that.
Those factors can make all the difference. I think that devotees, like you pointed out, I think that they really would like to do it. They just don't know how to do it, and they don't know how to afford it. If you can add that guidance to help them become prosperous, and prosperous means just that we're comfortable. We don't feel any fear that I won't be able to feed my family next month, you know, that my children will have a life. It doesn't mean that you drive a fancy car necessarily. So, and I think for the moment, we have to not use the modern society like the snake that goes in and eats the mouse in the mouse hole and then lives in the mouse hole. You know, he gets a meal and he gets a home, both. So we have to exploit the modern society. And I suggest that selling quality food is becoming a more and more needed, you know, service for the material world. And, you know, branding and packaging and whatever you have to do might be the way to get the axe handle to cut down the tree. Later, as you've built your farming capacities, and of course, while you're making some income, you're also developing your own food. Later on, you can stabilize and retract perhaps from that and just have your own prosperous farm growing. That's at least my thinking. I've tried a lot of angles. I bought some of the ISKCON farms and negotiated them, watched them all fail. Even Gitanagari it's not a success in my opinion. It's not a farm. It's a retreat center now. Ironically, the one place Prabhupada wanted to start Varnasrama has become a retreat center. It's a temple in the countryside, you know. And they'll say, "Well, we got cow protection." I don't believe that's cow protection. They charge, okay, it's fine. You charge $20 a gallon or whatever they charge for the milk, but every 4 or 5 years they go back to the Indians and beg for some more money for the cows.
Yeah,
so that's okay basically if you can beg money, but what householder is going to live like that? To have cows, I have to go beg? You're not protecting the cows until you show how they're economically viable. You have to prove it and show the method. In Mexico, if you get cheap land, you have a better chance. We're looking into the sprouting, the sprouted fodder systems, you know, because we can, on smaller amounts of land, we can produce a large amount of nutritious fodder. But it's tricky, and then we have to measure the lactation periods and the mortality rates, and we have a whole spreadsheet to try to calculate that we're not overgrowing the herd and thus overstressing the land. And we calculate also what each particular farm what its carrying capacity. Some land can carry 1 cow per acre. Some land takes 5 acres to carry 1 cow. So all these things have to be carefully considered. And there's a lot of Brahminical science involved. You got to use your Brahmin brain, and I see that you have one.
Well, Vaishya brain. I find that that's one of the biggest problems, the burnout. So you take someone from the city, put them to work the land, they're going to burn out in no more than 6 months max, because it's so much physical work. It's just unbearable. It's just, and so they think of office. Any kid today, he's used to games, cell phone, digital, immediate gratification. You put him in the environment of hard labor, it's just so distasteful. And so on top of that, you work very hard and you lose the crop. There's pests, there's all this stuff. And then you're like, I barely make any money. I'm working so hard, and this life sucks. This life sucks. So what I find the solution is bring the internet, work over the internet. It's very easy to bring someone from the city into a beautiful place and make money through some online work. And that solves the problem of the transition. Once you get used to living in a beautiful place, then you start gardening, little small projects. It develops. You get used to pure milk, pure water, pure air. Once you're spoiled by goodness, and then you can't go back. So it's just a transition, you know.
I'm trying to greatly accelerate the process of transition by, instead of working the internet, immediately teaching them how to make just as much money by farming.
But a burnout, you know, burnout.
Not necessarily, and it's not necessarily that hard work. I mean, you do food forests, you do no-till farming, you do managed grazing, you do you can do poly houses, you can do all kinds of things that take more brains than brawn, more brains than muscle. So that's why I say you have to find a way.
Well, but how do you fix the delay? Because you plant a tree, it'll take 3 years, 6 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
These are problems.
That's a problem.
There is a requirement of patience, investment.
That's the
in that
problem. We're
time.
spoiled. We have no
Yeah.
patience, you see. Your cell phone, you click immediately.
Yeah.
You scroll on TikTok, it's immediate. So
It's
we
not
have
easy.
to break the patience barrier. And so that's why there's this transition. So Prabhupada basically, I recall hearing a lecture recently. He basically says, we'll bring anyone. They just follow the 4 principles, chant rounds, and he's acting like a father. So he creates the farm. You join, I'm your father, I'll feed you, I'll give you a place to stay, and you just simply work according to your Varna. I think there's no other way around that, honestly, because the youth is not gonna get out of the city and work the land and have patience and all these things. It's just not gonna happen. It's very difficult unless there's world war and all these things then.
Well, that's one reason I'm especially focusing on young men that are in their teens and looking forward to a life. And part of our training, actually, you've hit on an important point. Not only do we train them in the science of living off the land, we train them on their, they do hands-on work, and we train them how to work. That's one of the things I'm stressing to our teachers. You got to teach these boys to love work. Like maybe you, when you grew up, certainly I know one of my first jobs, I was working with an Italian cement. He set driveways and streets and things. And man, he worked me like a slave. I had to throw that sledgehammer and break concrete all day in the hot sun and carry it out in wheelbarrows. And, I did other jobs that were also physically demanding. And I just learned to love work. And that's something you have to build into people. I love to, build things and work in gardens but yes, I'm not a plowman. That's a little beyond my ability. But we're doing no-till farming. We're not plowing. We're doing other things. There's a lot of things to figure out. And I stressed in the beginning, my way is not the only way. It's not the right way even, maybe. It's just what I'm doing. I'm just reporting.
Any other questions?
We're all trying to figure it out,
I'd love to hear more when you get a chance, Prabhu, about your Mexico venture. I have a interest in
Sure. Yes, I wrote you an email like 2 years ago,
Okay.
I think. I'll send you my TikTok account so you can.
I don't have the TikTok. I don't know how to do those
Oh, okay.
things. But
I'll just email.
and-
I'll just email. Yeah, no problem. Any way I can help, I'd be happy.
Krishna Sharon, you're unmuted. Did you have a question? Okay, you muted. Okay, I was just seeing if you had a question there. Prabhu, I wanted to thank you so much for your time. We're at just a little bit past 9, and I don't see any other questions here. So I'm wondering this might be a convenient stopping point. So just kind of, I'm recapping just for myself. So we've talked some about the instructions that you received from Prabhupada. Now, I want to go all the way back to that because this was another area, and we have touched on it, but I wanted to be very specific about this. Srila Prabhupada left India in the latter part of 1977 and actually did travel as far as London with the intention of reaching Gitanagar. So that entire episode there, even if somehow, so if someone can discount or the 50% statement as you mentioned, Srila Prabhupada left India in the condition that he was in physically to go to America for a specific purpose. And that's documented. I mean, so even if we leave that aside, we have the activity of Prabhupada leaving India to come to America. And so just a little bit more around that in terms of not only what you heard and what you saw, but who else was party to the fact that Prabhupada was leaving for that particular purpose. That's
okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to correct the record a bit. Prabhupada, that was one of the purposes, was not the only purpose. He also said that if I go there to see my disciples in the West, at the risk of my life, they will be very encouraged. He said, never mind if I die, you can bury me on the top of 55th Street. You remember the high rise there they had in New York. So he wanted to see his disciples and encourage them. And obviously he would have gone to New York also and preached. But then he definitely was talking about going to Gita Nagari. So he had, multiple purposes, mostly to encourage devotees and preach and go to Gita Nagari. Those are the two primary ones that he talked about. So I just wanted to give a little balance there. Who knew? They're all gone. I think I'm the only living witness. Yeah, I mean, Bhakta True Maharaj was there part of the time, not as much as I was, but he was an important figure when he was there. TKG obviously was there the whole time. They're all gone. Pendra, Brahmananda, maybe Guru Kripa knows something. He was in and out, very much trusted by Prabhupada. I don't remember him being in these conversations. So I think I'm probably, as I understand, I'm perhaps the only living witness, and I'm sorry for that. I'm not very, sometimes some people don't find me believable, but
no,
there's a reason.
This is why it's so important that we had this discussion. And that was my purpose, my original purpose, because there are persons who might later not understand. In other words, setting the record straight as you've done in regards to these things is just so important.
Well, he certainly didn't intend to stop the preaching.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all. But, this was the next step, the next 50%.
Mm.
By 1977, the movement growth was appearing to be like an unstoppable train. Keep using these train analogies. I think it's my speculation, but as I observed, I think Prabhupada himself was surprised at how it was because in the early days, there was nothing happening in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking to see the boat schedule to go back. He thought it wasn't going to happen. And by 1977, it was just exploding.
Mm.
And I think then he became concerned, as I observed it, about the leadership, its ability to manage the growth, and about how these devotees would be cared for. Therefore, Varnashram. And therefore, I heard in 77 him say twice. Once he said, he was yelling. He said, no more sannyas. No more sannyas. Boil the milk. Right? He said some other choice things too. He was quite angry. And then later in 77, in front of me, he said, no more growth. Boil the milk.
Mm.
And then he was becoming concerned, obviously, with the lack of ability in the leadership. It was very much, many things point to this, that he was very concerned. And about how the devotees would be cared for. Because now we're getting so many families, so many women, so many children. I think he was looking ahead and therefore bringing out what Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had also dreamed of, which is a Vaishnava Varnashram, a Daivi Varnashram,
Now,
a Varnashram of demigods.
yes, I'd like to read something. This is quoted in the Speaking About Varnasrama book, especially about in looking at. Well, anyway, I'll just read it. This is from February 14th of 1977, the year you referenced with the growth. Prabhupada, in big scale, you cannot make all of them as brahmanas or sannyasis. No, that is not possible. This is a small scale. How many percentage of the people of the world we are controlling? Very insignificant. But if you want to make the whole human society perfect, then this Krishna consciousness movement should be introduced according to Krishna's instruction. If you want to do it in a large scale for the benefit of the whole human society. Now we're picking up some of them best. That is another thing. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, para upakara. Why a certain section should be picked up? The whole mass of people will get the benefit of it. Then it is required systematic. Sway sway karmini abhirata, sangside lavatenara. Para upakara means mass benefit, not there is certain section. Then we have to introduce this Varnasrama Dharma. It must be done perfectly, and it is possible, and people will be happy. So I'm just opposing that fact. In 1977, certainly we thought, if not next month, the month next afterwards, we would take over everything. But Prabhupada puts it in perspective. He says, where things are now is very insignificant. So, and the big scale is actually Varnashram. It's just so amazing.
Yeah. I think that is in parallel with what I was just saying also, that I think he was anticipating the growth. He saw the movements starting to explode. In the last couple of years, you remember the book distribution was off the charts, unbelievable. It's like miraculous. And the growth of the temples, and it was just going from strength to strength.
Mm.
And I did see his concern about the leadership it really did weigh heavy on him. It really did.
Dr. Ulysses has his hand up for a question. Or
Yes. So we have two phenomena happening. The train is going to crash. The whole civilization is unsustainable. So Prabhupada, in other lectures, he points out to the fact that Ugra karma is going to be even worse as time passes. So, just to make a living, we have to work harder and harder and harder. So this is where people in the city, what they're experiencing, just suffering inflation, everything more expensive. So we have to do the Disneyland, the Vaikuntha land. There's a place where they can join, live a simple life, and then just escape hell, basically. And that has to be outside of the city, where mode of goodness. So that's why Varnashram is so important. So I don't think there's any way for us to stop the trend of the cities. It's just hellish. It's just impossible to have mode of goodness. It's just so much stress. It's so difficult to maintain oneself. No peace. So we have to start with peace. Krishna explains, if you don't have peace, how can you even have any happiness? So I think we just have to get people out of the city, put them in a farm environment, remove their anxiety for maintaining themselves, and simply engage in work. That's the formula. That's Vaikuntha land, Vaikuntha land.
Yes, thank you. I want to emphasize before everyone leaves also, in my opinion, the purpose of Varnashram is to raise demigods, to raise young mothers who can produce more demigods, to produce young men who live like demigods, who when they walk on the earth shakes. And if we think less than that, then we're just not understanding the mission of our parampara. This golden age that Prabhupada talked about in Kali will not be realized if we keep bringing in Varnasamkara. We're preaching, okay, we're bringing in Varnasamkara. They were born terribly low born. Me, I'm a very good example of a low born person. My potential is very stunted, very little. But if we can raise children the way they're supposed to be raised, and that requires a village, it requires a Varnashram village, requires a village of Vaishnava Varnashram, Daivi Varnashram. And that's the future of this movement. That's the only way we will participate in the golden age. not by bringing in more and more Varnas. Yes, bring them in, but where are the leaders? Where are the shining demigods? They have to come from Garbhadang Samskar. If you want the demigods literally to come from the other planets to come here and take birth in our communities, then you have to be ready to take care of them. They're not going to come and be stuffed with cow flesh and and pornography and everything else that all of the people we're preaching to are raised on. They're going to want to be raised in a pristine environment. So this is how we'll conquer the world. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. It starts with the motherhood. I know many Western women, because of the abuse they've experienced and the disrespect, they find the title mother to be an insult. But actually in Vedic culture, it's the highest honor you can achieve. It is the highest honor you can achieve, but not just for a woman, in society, to be called a mother. So sometimes when I was training brahmacharis, they'd say, well, why do I have to call a little girl mother? And I'd say, because someday she will be somebody's mother. And, you should not think of her as an item of exploitation, but as an honored being who is the foundation of society. This is the Vedic perspective. This is the Varnashram perspective. We have to have that, as well as it's a socio-economic system integrated together with Mother Nature, with the land, the soil, Mother Cow, and the human mother. And so that's what makes a pious society and allows us to breed strong children who can change the world. So that's the real goal of it. You have to think generations ahead. You have to be able to look forward. And then you can be how do I keep my enthusiasm when I'm just barely moving forward on establishing Varnashram? Even maybe I'm establishing, I'm not even sure. But how am I so enthusiastic about it? Because I'm looking at 20 generations ahead. I know that a seed planted today in 20 years, in 50 years, will be a strong oak tree.
Yes. Prabhu, thank you so much for this. Let me ask if there are any final questions. Anyone else? Now's your opportunity. Jay G. Das. Jay, okay. We have a question. Go ahead. Go ahead. Unmute yourself. Do you know how to unmute yourself? There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
I thought you said you could unmute us.
I couldn't. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. It's a great privilege to be part of this conversation. And yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu, for giving us your insights on this very deep topic. I'm currently living in New Talavandam, which is 1,200 acres of land. And there are many nice devotees there. Well, actually, I should say there are a few devotees there that have been there for a long time. And it's a very old population. I think the average age is 65 or something like that. But my question is, do you think Srila Prabhupada's intention was to have all the Varnas and all the ashrams living on the farm and demonstrating a little cataclysm of what society is supposed to look like for the benefit of the masses?
Well, I think that he intended the temples and farms to be working together. You remember, of course, that he wanted the restaurants to be supplied by the farms, and that those restaurants, of course, would be in the city, usually adjoining a temple or in the city where a temple was. So the preaching, 50%, it's not that, of course, the whole infrastructure he built first of the preaching centers and the preaching mission was the first 50%. That was the most important to begin there. And that was never to be discarded or dismantled. But there has to be a rebalancing because families, and as you may know, those of us who, I neglected my children because I was out saving the world, or thinking I was anyway, I had that ego, and that is okay in an emergency, I suppose, but it's not the long-term way of things, yeah. So I don't know that all are supposed to be in the countryside, but I think that should be our foundation, is being connected to the land. I think if you take the image of the Amish, remove meat eating, cow slaughter, and have them preaching also, they would be the fastest growing religion in America. They would be. They've got community, they've got living on the land, they've got, a happy life generally, they would be booming if they were preaching and, and bringing other people in and, and stop the cow slaughter. So that's why I say, a little bit tongue in cheek, I think the Krishnas need to go Amish. We need to go Amish.
I was looking for a quote in response to that. There is a place where Srila Prabhupada says that these farms are very important because there we can demonstrate the full scheme of Varnasrama. Unfortunately, I'm not able to put my hand on that quote, but I'll continue to look for it as we go on.
Yeah.
If I can that. Go ahead.
The problem with the Amish and in general farm attempts, somebody mentioned, should we study how farms have failed? And I think we'll find the same pattern all over again and again, that they don't have Varna. They don't have Kshatriya, Vaishya. They don't have that social division. So without social division, it's always going to be chaotic. And as soon as it starts to grow up to a certain size, it's going to blow up. Guaranteed blow up. You need social order. There has to be hierarchy, who's leader, who's follower, who's businessman, who's preacher, who's priest. Without that, even the Amish, same problem with the Amish, they don't have social order. They kind of make it happen, but it's not structured. And once we have that, then I think that's the breakthrough. That's the emphasis. That's why it's step number one. What's your own Varna? What's your own Varna?
Mm-hmm. I wish I could put my finger on this particular quote, and I know it's here, where Srila Prabhupada addresses, answers. In any case, Prabhu, J.G. Das, if you download the Speaking About Varnasrama book from speakingaboutvardasrama.com, you can find that answer in here. And I apologize for not being able to put my hand on it. One of the projects that we are looking to do is create an index for this book so that whenever these types of questions come up, I can easily find, and you can easily find the answers based on Srila Prabhupada's own statements. Gokula Brown.
Well, the reason why I asked, can you hear me?
Yes, okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the reason why I asked that question is because there is some disagreement among the devotees whether Srila Prabhupada intended for all the devotees to live on the farm or just farmers and Brahmins. We have our temple complex, the Brahmachari, Brahmacharini ashram, then you have farmers. So where do the other Varnas fit in? Do we actually?
Where Prabhupada addresses it in terms of his intention, and that's a direct statement. So, but once again, I just wasn't able to put my hand on it. Gokula, Prabhu, go ahead.
So that letter was from Krishna Maharaj on behalf of Prabhupada as his secretary, and he's writing to Hari Sori in Australia, and he's talking about the farm New Govardhan. And he says something like, if we can display the full Varnashram system on these farms, we can make the whole world Krishna conscious. I yield.
Yes, it sounds like the quote I'm trying to find still. Thank you for that. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think I'm just a family here, just a couple, married couple. But basically I can see the way it works. I broadcast on TikTok, beautiful farm, beautiful scenery, lots of animals, produce. People immediately, they love it. They want to join. It's like easy. It's like, so we just have to show that, and you just have more people doing that. Then you have Varnasrama, and then newcomers are managed properly, and that's it, really. Solving the economic problem. I think that's a big element. So location, make it easy to live there, very cheap lifestyle, then easy.
Somehow I don't see Abhiram Prabhu. So
Oh, maybe he disconnected. It's the language barrier, because everybody who speaks English, the lifestyle, the expenses are so high. US, Europe. And then you go to Mexico, it's cheap, but there's very few devotees. There's no boil to milk.
Oh, the Narada Priya? Go ahead.
Sorry, no milk to boil, I meant to say. There's no milk to boil in Spanish.
Yeah. Go ahead,
Narada
and
Priya.
you'll have to unmute yourself, Narada Priya. You see, you're trying. Okay. I'm not able to help you. So a number of persons have had issues with trying to unmute this evening. Just keep trying. Everyone else was able to do it. Hopefully
The
you'll.
bottom of the screen on the far left is an audio button. An audio.
I think she sees it, but it's just somehow not responding. Oh, I'm so sorry. What to do?
You'll need to take your cursor right down to the bottom of the screen, and you'll come up with a panel with all the things at the bottom. And on the left is an audio. Click on that.
Let's see if she's still there. She's still there. But,
Okay, finally got it.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit about, I really agree with Abhiram Prabhu is saying about women, because I had a blog. I was really kind of disturbed by criticism of Prabhupada, of his views on women in ISKCON. I've been in ISKCON over 40 years. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I really was looking at, because I've had 3 daughter-in-laws to deal with, is the media. It really influences people. And so I could say that in the past, it wasn't exactly that women were abused, but it was the lack of Krishna consciousness. And that went both ways. The men would see the women as sense objects, and the women would see the man as someone who's going to supply her sense gratification. And that's really where the problem ensues. And of course, we have the media, the modern media, which, in textbooks and schools, of course, the technology, they are preaching it to everyone, that sense gratification is the goal of life. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with that, and I haven't seen that mentioned. And also, I was really looking into this feminism, because I lived through the 70s, and let me tell you, your generation, because a lot of you are probably about a decade, I'm still, I'm just starting my 60s here. You've been in the 50s, 60s, that is. 70s was hell, because, I lived in Boulder, Colorado, the hippie town, USA, and all the horrors that went with that, and growing up as a teenage woman. So it was very traumatic. So I really rejected feminism when I read Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada's books made me see, the light. And it was so liberating. And that was real liberation. And what I'm trying to say here is this feminism that's been going on is really about population control. If you see about the demoniac mentality, get the children as early as possible into public nurseries and schools, and get the woman, that's getting the woman out of the home. So then that's the degradation of the family right there. So I really agree on that point, that Varnashram begins with this womanhood and faithful womanhood, because you want stable families. If you want to have, it takes a lot of stable families to make that Varnashram community, because you might get people moving in, but then, oh, there's divorce rate, it's so high, because people don't always understand these things about, this Krishna consciousness is the solution to understand, that sense gratification is not the goal of life. That's my 2 cents here.
All right. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, they will.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Abhiram Prabhu, I think we lost you for a bit, did we?
Yeah, my battery died. I just had to plug in. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what she just spoke is, of course, I couldn't agree more. I think even in ISKCON, because of the danger of abuse and neglect and disrespect, if it's not abuse of womanhood, there is a defensive reaction amongst many women, which could be called feminism. It's very much present. And the solution is not to push it down. The solution is to provide the safe, respectful environment so a woman can flower and be a woman and celebrate what God gave her to be. But that requires good men, and good men, it's a whole series. It requires elders.
Oh, no.
You muted
Somehow-
yourself accidentally.
Somehow, I think it might have been me. I apologize.
So, we have a lot of work to do, but the family unit is where some of you can do the most important work. And some of you have succeeded in making children that are Krishna conscious and protecting them. It's been difficult because the DNA of ISKCON has been a conquest, a preaching conquest, and much was. You have to keep in mind that when Prabhupada was pushing us so hard, he knew he was going to go at any time, and he was in an emergency mode. But that's not how it's, it has to be all the time. It has to settle down and build the deep foundations now. I tell that to the Indian devotees. I say, we did the front work. We took the bullets. Now you make the civilization. Why did Prabhupada say, and I was there when he said it several times, you all know, he said, do not make me like Alexander. And what he meant by that was very clear. He explained, Alexander was famous. He could conquer. He could win battles. And then he would move on to go to the next battle, and he would leave a general in charge to hold that territory. And a general doesn't know how to run a society. He only knows how to kill people. So he would lose behind him everything that he had conquered. It would be lost. And that's what Prabhupada said, do not make me like Alexander, that I have conquered. And that was the era that when Prabhupada was here, it was all about the war, attack, attack, and attack again, to quote von Clausen, right? And General George Patton. That was the principle. But then in the last years, and all along, he anticipated that we have to have a civilization to sustain this conquering even.
Yes.
Because we have to bring up real soldiers, real generals, real, highly bred, highly inspired, young people with mystic power,
Bhakti
Prabhupada had mystic power. It's a common thing amongst a evolved human being. It's very common.
Bhakti Lucis has his hand up, and Mother Narda Priya, did you also have your hand back up again?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that really quick, because I really agree with that also about helping the men, because in ISKCON, it's a lot like the outside world where we're pushing the women up to, I would say it should be for both sides, the men too. And that's where we don't have that Gurukula. Usually the Gurukuls, they're run by women. And I had my grandson one time that he was, they have the impression that school is for women. And because they have the all women in their school. You know, they don't have, it's like one man was in the school that he was going to. And so we really need to work on that and educating men properly. And then automatically women and children will be cared for, because that's the nature of the man, is very protective. And so it's so important.
Thank you so much. Dr. Ulysses.
Haribo. So regarding the marriage problem, I find that the Varna, the astrology, using astrology to do the compatibility of the couples. So Kshatriya woman should marry Kshatriya man, Brahmana woman, Brahmana man, and also matching Gana, which is Rakshasa, Manusya, or Deva. That's part of the calculator I showed on the website. So because we're not using the Vedic knowledge, Prabhupada explains these things have to be used to do the proper matching for a couple to be compatible. So again, Varnasrama solves everything, solves the couple problem, the married problem, the economic problem. I can see why it's 50% of the mission. Yes, it's you need to solve all these problems in one shot, you know.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay.
You see some of the Indian devotees coming up, the big preachers. They're amazing. Have you, what's his name? Sitapati, not Sitapati, Sampati in Pune. Have you seen his lectures online? My God, it's just unbelievable how much he knows and how, I mean, he can quote all day long, but not just quote, he puts it together so brilliantly. And then there's various Indian devotees, preachers, and because they come from good families, they come from good backgrounds, they're head and shoulders above us. I don't know a godbrother that can match this Sampati, not one who could ever preach as powerfully and as brilliantly as he can preach. We need thousands of such preachers, and those boys have to be raised in good families.
Dr. Ulysses has his hand up again. Go ahead.
Yes, on our defense, fallen lowborn rascals, Krishna gives us the benefit of when he says it's better to do your duty imperfectly than even if you do someone else's duty. So I take shelter of that because I find that even for us Westerners with such low culture, just simply by doing what our nature and our bodily nature motivates us to, by the Varna, even if it's faulty and not messed up and we have poor memory and all that, it somehow or other works because there's social order. So there's hope, you know.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. The Lord is very pleased with all of the devotees that have given sincerely whatever they have. I'm really only talking about how to build an army and how to make this movement achieve its potential. That's you know, of course, what we're all talking about.
Okay. Okay, so someone has a question here that they put on. Let me go to that on the chat. And this is gosh, I got so many questions here. Okay, so I'll read it. Stoka Krishna did not, I'll just read it. So what I find difficult to process internally is the hierarchical structure with its gradated tiers of rights. I instinctively reject any situation in which I would once again be at the mercy of ISKCON authorities, Kshatriyas. I don't know who, but anyway, Kshatriyas, after having experienced and witnessed so much managerial abuse. Rank and file devotees were exploited, nearly driven into the ground, while those at the top enjoyed a high-flying lifestyle. What safeguards would be put in place to prevent this?
Well, I would take issue with ISKCON leaders being Kshatriyas. If I look at the GBC primarily, I would say they're intellectuals, philosophers, and thus Brahmins. And of course, most of them maintain very high standards of cleanliness and discipline. So they're Brahminical. The problem with Brahmins being the leaders of society, they're not the leaders of leaders in the sense that they're giving the guiding principles, but they're not the executives. And there's the problem we have in ISKCON. I mean, I was a CEO of publicly listed companies in my life twice. So I kind of know how company organizations run, right? And I've also studied history quite a lot, and I kind of know a little bit about political science and how governments run and armies run, etc. And if you have Brahmins controlling everything, nothing will be got done and no decisions will be finalized. As soon as they get close to a decision, they'll get frightened and they'll form a committee and make sure that no decision is made. And if that committee comes close to a decision, they'll form some subcommittees to study some small point. A Kshatriya knows that every time I make a decision, there's risk. And for sure, I'm going to make some wrong decisions, but to hell with it, because something has to be done. What does Krishna say to Arjuna? Action is better than no action. That's the Kshatriya's mode. The Brahmin will go on prevaricating and thinking and talking and analyzing, and that's not the way to lead a railroad. That's not how it works.
Can I offer also a response to that in regards to Kshatriyas, that Srila Prabhupada's statement in a class, and it's to this point. This is from Johannesburg, October 17th, 1975. It's a Bhagavad Gita lecture. My dear friend, Parantapa. Parantapa means one who gives trouble to the enemies. This is the material world. A Kshatriya cannot behave like a Brahmana to excuse. Brahmana business is to excuse. Shema Rupa Tapasvina. Those who are tapasvi, they can excuse. But those who are in the government power to make justice, there's no question of excuse. Life for life. You have killed one man, you must be killed. This is justice. Here it is. A Brahmana may excuse. All right, you have killed my man. Never mind, I excuse you. That is a Brahmana's business. But a Kshatriya, the government, the ruling power, he cannot do so. It is his mercy. Mute yourself, please. Let me find out who that is. Now continue. Okay.
Yes.
I just mute him. Let me continue. I just had to mute whoever that was. Said this is okay. Said, but the Kshatriya, the government, the ruling power cannot do so. It is his mercy. It is the government's mercy when a murderer is hanged. That is the injunction in Manasamhita. So Parantapa, you're a Kshatriya. Your business is to punish the unjust. For a Kshatriya, this kind of poor-heartedness that I shall not fight, give it up. Don't indulge in such a thing. So Prabhupada is pointing out here, you from a Brahmana, you won't get justice. They will excuse. And as Prabhu has mentioned, what's the word? OBS, obfuscate, and just it won't be done. But a Kshatriya will make a decision and take action. And pretty much the things that exercise Brahmanas for several decades, they make a decision and move on.
Yes. I'll give you some example. I worked professionally with a famous architect in India. His father was the first Chief Justice of India at independence, Chief Justice Khosla, who adjudicated the murderer of Gandhi. His name was not the murderer was named Nathuram Godse, and he shot Gandhi. And this was the judge that presided over that case, Chief Justice Khosla. And he listened, the murderer wrote a beautiful, amazing and convincing defense. And there were real reasons that Gandhi needed to be killed. He was going to destroy so many things by his stupidity and his arrogance. But Chief Justice Khosla, he said from the bench, this is a very elevated person, Chief Justice of India, he said, if it were my personal choice, I would free you. But because of the robes I wear and the obligations of these robes, I must hang you. Right? So he understood, he had the sentiment, just like Arjuna had the sentiment, and Prabhupada glorified him also for having that sentiment that he didn't want to kill. But then Krishna gave him a good tight slap in the head and said, no, you're speaking, sound like a wise man, but you're foolish, So that's it. One has to do his duty. And the Kshatriyas, we don't have, I was commenting on this, what you read, Prabhu, and he said many other important things in that. But the first thing is the assumption that ISKCON leaders are Kshatriyas. They're not Kshatriyas. Nor are guards Kshatriyas. That's another on the other end of it. They're not chokidars. They're not guards. Those are Shudras also. The guys that stand at the door and protect the door, that's not a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya is a leader, a king, a protector, a visionary, a builder of society. It's a very demanding position. And we have Munis, we have Brahmins in the GBC. That's what's risen up to the top mostly. And therefore, I would say that from a manager's experience, as a business manager in corporations, I don't think one of them could get hired. Not one of them. Not one. And as a group, I mean, I can't remember any good decisions they made, frankly. It's really that bad. And in terms of the individual character, it's amazing, wonderful, saintly people. I mean, I look forward to their blessings. But as Kshatriyas, I don't think so. I don't think so. My children, like many children, were damaged under their care, also under my fault as well, but under their care. 2 of my children will never recover in their whole life because of the terrible leadership. And so many families have been wrecked, so many children. And I'm sorry, they're responsible. And if they don't like being responsible, then get the hell out of the kitchen. If it's too hot for you, get out of the kitchen. That's the way the world works.
Bhakti Ulysses has his hand up again.
Yes, just a comment on that. I find that there's a lot of pain associated with the idea of caste system and hierarchy and all these things. So one way I solve this problem is just to shift the definition to make it easier to understand for us Westerners, fallen rascal. It's vocational training. What are you going to do to make a living? That's it. That as simple as that. What you're going to do in society to make a living. And that's going to make you happy. If you sum it up to that side, rather than I'm bigger, better, bolder, whatever, it just simplifies everything. It's just, what are you going to do to make a living so that you can be happy in this world? Just a functional society,
I think that's correct in some ways, Prabhu, but I think it would be better said, and it would capture the more of the spirit, is to actually, the question is, how do I serve? How do I serve society? How do I serve the Lord? Because that's the real mood of the Varnashram Dharma, is that I serve the Lord through these different services that He's, Mayum Shustam, Guna Karma, Mayum Shus. I made this system, and therefore I follow it. I'm a woman. I have a potential to serve as a mother. I'm a child. I'm a man. I have a different natures, etc., etc. That is where it really, I've read some studies of the old villages, and it was completely a different mindset. I'm also inspiring devotees with prosperity. So there is that sort of selfish motive I'm using, but the long run, that service mood must be the real driver. In old villages, the farmer, he would have different sections of his crop designated for the different jatis. The jatis are like, so among Sudras, you've got iron workers that fix the plow. You've got carpenters. These are the jatis, the divisions of the Varna. So when the harvest came, he automatically gave certain part of that field to each of the jatis. And when his plow broke, he would just leave the plow at the carpenters. Nothing needs to be said. No bill is generated. No debt incurred. The carpenter did it because it was his duty. And the farmer farmed the land because it was his duty. right? And Arjuna was asked to kill because it was his duty to do so, although he didn't want to. He wasn't motivated by it, right? So I agree with what you're saying, and I'm not trying to say that you said the wrong thing. I think it's a way, it's one part of the way to say it. That the ultimate
it's like
beauty of
bhakti, you know?
Varnashram, the
Mhm.
ultimate beauty of Varnashram is that this
Service.
is my service to God. This is the body he gave me, the nature, the brain, and how can I serve God through this nature and brain by serving the whole Daivi society, the society of Daivtas, of demigods, of Vaishnavas. And this is my role in this society. And
Very nice.
whether I eat or don't eat, whether I win or, like Krishna told Arjuna, whether you're defeated or not, doesn't matter. Don't think of the result. Just do it because for the sake of it's your duty. So that's a very superior consciousness.
Very much so. Okay. All right, final call for any last questions. I don't see any hands up. Okay. Prabhu, I want to thank you so much for this time. This has been wonderful. I will have this up. Probably I'll break it into a few parts and so forth. So, but this will be available on the website, speaking about Varnasrama, and also we're also on YouTube speaking about Varnasrama as well. So, Prabhu, once again, thank you so much for your wonderful time. Also, let me once again put in the chat your contact information, because I know there was someone that asked about that. I have your email address. So it's Abhiram and then .ACBSP, correct?
At Gmail, but you can give my my WhatsApp if you want. Also, I'm quite active. I check my email several times a day, so it doesn't matter. Or my WhatsApp, as you like.
Let me put that in there. Just a moment.
In India, even the rickshaw guys are on WhatsApp. I don't know if it's that universal yet in America, but everybody's on WhatsApp.
Okay,
In Mexico, it is.
Okay, so there it is. So for anyone who would like to be in touch, regarding any of the numerous topics we've talked about, they have a way to be in touch with you. Okay. Once again, I want to thank everyone for your time and attention this evening. And I look forward to having
Thank you very much.
other opportunities for further discussion about speaking about Varnasrama. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare